The hour of 6:30 p.m. having arrived, I will call to order this regular meeting of the Planning Board. This meeting is being broadcast live on the City of Keene YouTube channel. The video is also streamed on the city's website and is posted on the website by the end of the next business day, barring any technical difficulties. Anyone wishing to view a copy of the agenda and supporting materials will find it on the city website. To view electronic copies of future agenda packets, please go to the homepage and subscribe to the city meetings email list. The public and other board members will be recognized to ask questions and make comments on the agenda item under discussion. After being recognized, all remarks are to be made through the chair. Will the staff please conduct the roll?
Harold Farrington.
Here.
Roberta Mastrogiovanni.
Here.
Mayor Jay Kahn.
Present.
Councilor Mike Remy. Sarah Vizani. Ryan Clancy. Kenneth Kost.
Here.
Armando Rangel.
Here.
And for the alternates, Stefan Mayu,
Present.
Randon Markelon, Tammy Adams, and Michael Hafer.
Here.
And there is space if you'd like to invite the alternates to participate as voting members.
Thank you, Ms. Brenner. Yes, I would like to make a note that I will ask the two alternates to be full voting members for this evening's meeting. Thank you. Okay. Moving on to the next agenda item, which is the minutes of the previous meeting. At this time, I'll ask for a motion to approve the minutes of the February 24, 2025 meeting.
So moved.
Thank you, Mayor Khan.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Rangel. Any questions or discussion or comments regarding the minutes? Okay. Seeing none, let's proceed to a vote. All those in favor of approving the minutes of the February 24 meeting, please indicate. Any opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. At this time, we'll move to a final vote on conditional approvals. So as a matter of practice, the Planning Board will issue a final vote on all conditionally approved plans after all of the conditions precedent have been met. This final vote will be the final approval and will start the 30-day appeal clock. May I ask the staff if there are any applications tonight that are ready for a final vote?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. There is one application this evening that's ready for a final vote. This is for 36 Elliott Street, which is a cottage court conditional use permit application. This application had two conditions precedent which have been met. Those included the owner's signature appears on the plans and submittal of final copies of the plans. And those conditions have been met.
Thank you. So at this time, I will entertain a motion for final approval on, do we have the project number?
I can move to issue final approval for PB-2025-02.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion, comments, questions from the board? Seeing none, I will call the vote. All those in favor of final approval on, what was the number again? PB 2025-02. All those in favor of final approval, please indicate. Any opposed? Final approval is granted. Thank you, Mary. Okay. At this time, I'm going to exercise prerogative as chairman to shift a couple of the agenda items around. And we are going to start with the public hearing for PB 2024-20, earth excavation permit, major amendment, and hillside protection conditional use permit. This project has already received completeness, correct? Okay, so we'll move to a presentation by the applicant at this time.
Yeah, we can roll that closer, or I would, just so that it's a block, then we can move that standing microphone over. Whichever you prefer. Back first, whatever.
Are you worried about blocking the audience?
Yes.
Yeah.
Why don't you just move these over right where I recorded that way?
And it's okay for them to present over there?
Yeah, this is fine too, if you're okay.
Yeah.
Is the board okay with them presenting in this area?
I assume you guys all have plans that you can follow along with us? Yeah.
Yep,
All right.
I'm okay.
Good evening, members of the Planning Board. My name is Justin Daigneault. I'm with Granite Engineering. I have with me Brent Cole, also with Granite. I have Joel Benazak, our hydrogeologist. I have Louis Remore with Capital Drilling and Blasting, and Cody Gordon, the applicant with G2 Land Holdings. So everybody's here. Hopefully you can answer any questions from you. The property is located in Keene on tax map 215, lots 7 and 8, and in Sullivan on map 5, lots 46 and 46-1. And just to let you know, we will be going to the town of Sullivan in April for the required special exception and planning board application for this project. So if you turn to sheet 3, that represents the existing conditions plan and the current gravel operations that received city approval back in 2022. This is the material processing area, as you can see. We have the crusher and we have all the stockpile areas here. And this area is approximately 7 acres in size. This is the existing access road off Route 9 with Otterbrook to the south. And what else can I say about this? The other key feature to this area, there's a sediment retention basin here that collects the stormwater associated with this pit and infiltrates it into the ground. The applicant is proposing an amendment to the approved application to expand his operation to the north. This first phase of the project helped establish the operating area, which you see here. The area required to process and store the material is such a large size that it prohibits further excavation of the pit to what was approved. The approval back in 2022 included removing an additional 40 feet of material from this. So the proposed pit floor would be another 40 feet down. So he can't excavate anymore because he doesn't have enough room to both excavate and process. So if we look at sheet 1 in the set, it's kind of an overview of the property. Shows the Keene and Sullivan town line. This expansion will consist of 8 periods or phases. Kind of refer to them in 2 different ways, but the access areas will be.
Excuse me, Mr. Dano, could you just give us a second to catch up to you on
Sure.
our packet? Thank
Yep.
you.
It's the overview plan.
Okay.
We have some long presentations in our packet, so somebody has that page number and can shout it out. 118, thank you.
118, all right, I'm getting there. Okay.
Is everybody
Thank you.
there? Yeah?
Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. So, once again, shows the overall property of the 4 parcels. It's got the Keene, Sullivan Town line. So, we refer in the project either periods or phases. This one's going to have 8. The pit areas will be accessed by the existing haul road down here, where the operations area is. And it will continue up into the land of Sullivan. Period 1 will be where the excavation really begins, is just north of that material processing area. Period 2 is just north of that. Then you've got period 3 and 4, and the reason why they're 3 and 4 is because a portion of it crosses into Sullivan, so that little small portion of the haul road is in Sullivan. It's its own period. Then you have 5 and 6, and then 7 is the most northern portion, which crosses over into Sullivan and the town line. See, period 8 is the final phase of the project. So once all the other phases are done and reclaimed, phase 8 will occur. Operations will be moved off-site, and the remaining amount of material will be excavated from here that was permitted in 2022. Each of the site plans shows further detail on grading, storm water, and erosion control for each phase. If the board would like to see that now, I can show you an example, or we can wait till after the presentation if you have any questions. I'll leave it up to you.
Yeah, why don't you just proceed with your presentation? and then we'll-
Yep, no problem. As mentioned, each pit will have a sediment retention area to detain the stormwater. The intent is to keep the stormwater on site. There'll be a large infiltration basin located down here that will capture and infiltrate the stormwater associated with the gravel pit. If you want to turn to sheet 17, it's the first reclamation plan. It's colored.
Mr. Chair, may I? I just wanted to let everyone know that that's on page 134 of your agenda packets.
Thank you, Ms. Fortson.
Okay.
Yep, got it.
So these 2 sheets represent the reclamation proposed. They're all color coordinated to represent each phase or period. 6 months prior to the completion of a period, a permit renewal application will be submitted to the city prior to moving on to the next phase. This will give the city time to review period completeness, and that reclamation has been completed. Permits, waivers. The application requires a conditional use permit and 2 waivers, same ones that were approved for the project in 2022. The first is a conditional use permit. That's for excavation on 15 to 25% slopes. And the first waiver is a surface water resource setback waiver. That's for excavation within 250 feet of a wetland. There are wetlands on the left and the right of the site. This plan kind of shows it well. There's one here. There's one here. Offset them both 250 feet. It really restricts there's limited room remaining to excavate. So the wetland buffer area that we're seeking a waiver for is the one on the left. There is this area here that was permitted in 2022 and approved, and we are proposing this area up in gray. So There was a requirement to not get any closer than 75 feet to the wetland, and we are not proposing to get any closer to it, just additional area to the north of that wetland within that 250-foot buffer. The second waiver request is for a maximum excavation area no greater than 5 acres. The current materials and processing area you see was roughly 7 acres. That was a waiver that was approved in the previous permit. And the applicant needs this size of an area open to continue materials he generates from all the additional phases. So that, this area will remain open, or, you know, it'll remain open, and then that 7 acres will be always open. He opens up this phase. If this, you know, if this is 3 acres, then it's going to be a total of 10. I think we've calculated the max to be 12. And then, obviously, once this phase is done, it's restored, reclaimed, before it goes to the next one. So this one kind of always stays open as an area to process his material until the end, until the last phase. This project will require an HDS alteration of terrain permit, which has been submitted for review. And I just wanted to mention that this project proposes no wetland impacts. And last week, we had a site walk with the city staff, planning board, and conservation committee members. It was a wet, rainy, cold day, kind of like today, only snow. And then we had a formal meeting with the Conservation Commission. And I'm not sure, but I believe they have provided city staff with their recommendations. So, thank you, board. With that, I'd like to hand it back to you, Mr. Chair. And if there's any questions, which I'm sure there will be, we'd be happy to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Daniel. Yeah, at this time, I'll open it up for the board to see if they have any questions for the applicant. Mayor Khan?
Mr. Chairman, I just thank the planning staff and the company for the site visit. It was very informative. It's kind of hard to envision 50-foot elevation differences, and which essentially was one phase to the next phase. And it was helpful to be on the site to be able to see the work that's planned.
Okay. Thank you. At this time, I'll ask staff to come forward and provide their comments.
So, Mr. Chair, thank you. Mary Brenner, Senior Planner. So the applicant, I'm sure they could speak to this some more, but the applicant has expressed to staff that they would like to seek a continuation of this application. We had our third-party reviewer, which is Fieldstone Land Consultants, review the application. And at the time that we sent out your packet, I believe we included a memo from them that mentioned a few items that they wanted further clarification on. So the applicant is working on addressing those questions and concerns. And so they've requested a continuation until the May meeting. If they could confirm that for the record, that would be great. And then we did hold a Conservation Commission meeting on March 17th. And the Conservation Commission, it was a very muddy site visit, and following that, the board did discuss and came up with a recommendation, which I would be happy to read to you right now.
As long as it wasn't as muddy as the day was.
Right. So the commission voted unanimously to recommend that the planning board consider the following with respect to this application. The first item was greater consideration of a 100-year storm or flood event. This application uses the 50-year storm event, and the commission recommends using a 100-year storm event, given the fact that storm events are in general increasing in intensity. They also recommend further study into potential off-site impacts of acid mine drainage. One of the members of the commission is a geologist. He's a retired Keene State College professor who studies geology and was concerned about the material that's being mined from the site how it's used once it's sold. And then they also talked about the potential to increase the forest buffer with Route 9, and including in the remediation plan, native pollinator-friendly plantings and considering some trees to address the view concerns from Route 9. So that's what their recommendation was to you. I do want to note that the off-site impacts of acid mine drainage, I'm not sure is within your purview. I believe your purview is limited to the site impacts, but that was something that the Conservation Commission noted in their motion.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Daniel, are you aware of, I know we're probably getting hit from a few different sides here, but you're aware of the Conservation Commission's recommendations? You've seen those? Okay.
We are, yep.
And you're also have seen the Fieldstone consultant report, who was engaged by the planning board to help provide some expertise in this area.
Yep, we've had multiple meetings with Fieldstone
Okay.
to talk through the comments and how we would address them. That is the reason we will ultimately request a continuance tonight. We thought it was important to meet with this board in order to get questions kind of out there, things that you may be concerned with, so that we could either address them tonight or come back to the planning board with answers. We do have a slew of professionals here with us tonight. If you do have questions, one of the main reasons for continuance is to address the acid mine drainage. You, as the city of Keene, have very, very strict regulations. I would argue that they are the most strict in New England by threefold. But that said, acid mine drainage is something that we have to test for. We have drilled many boring holes out there. We have our geologist with us today. And it's something that we are taking serious. It is something that we want to try to prevent and make sure that we don't have any acid mine drainage on site. And we can do that by mitigating the stockpiles and making sure that we move material quickly off site so that there's not any sort of change in the pH level of any surface water. One good thing about this site is that we do retain all the surface water on site. We don't let any leave the site. And a lot of times you see old mines that do have surface water leaving the site that end up becoming an issue. These are usually relevant in Pennsylvania or in Virginia. Usually you don't have acid mining concerns in New England, which is why DES doesn't monitor it, and you don't see any other states really monitoring it either. But your regulations are the regulations, and we have to prove that we are helping mitigate and prevent this acid mine drainage situation. So we will work with Fieldstone in the next few weeks and before we come back to the board to make sure that concern is addressed.
All right, thanks for your comments on that. At this time, I'd like to get back to our normal process here and just open to the board if they have any questions for staff regarding the staff report. Mayor Khan?
And I don't know that this is just for the staff. I just want to make sure that traffic concerns are addressed by the owner or wherever it's most appropriate. I think the volume of traffic and the kind of signage that ought to be appropriate to alert cars coming in both directions, traffic in both directions, is a concern that ought to be addressed. Thanks.
Ms. Fortson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Megan Fortson, planner. So I think that the applicant can provide some additional information on this as well, but my understanding is that they are not proposing any increase in traffic as part of this application. And so they have resubmitted their initial traffic analysis from when the project was first approved in 2022. Although they're expanding the gravel pit, I don't believe that they expect an increase in the number of vehicle trips or truck trips into and out of the site. But again, the applicant could further clarify that for you.
That is
Thank
correct.
you, Megan. We don't anticipate what was established during Phase 1 and what you approved in 2022 is what we anticipate. As Justin mentioned, we've established kind of the processing area. And if that processing area doesn't really expand, we can't really get any more aggregate out of it. So that area remains the same. We're just providing more aggregate that works through that processing area and expanding the duration of the pit, but no more anticipated traffic.
So while I understand the responses, just a personal observation driving past is there is a certain volume and the distances from downhills and curves in that part of the road. I think I'm asking if either staff, maybe Public Works, maybe the owner, want to make some recommendations to improve awareness of the kind of traffic that you have. It's unusual at that location to see large vehicles coming in and off the site, and I've made my point.
Yeah, we understand, Mayor. We will work with staff and the city engineer to see if we can add some signage out there to make it more clear and prevent any sort of safety concerns that you may have.
It's a little bit blind.
Yep.
The driveway's a little bit blind.
Yep, we can work on that.
Ms. Fortson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just did want to respond and let you know that we have had the application reviewed. The most current materials have been reviewed by Brian Ruoff, who's the city engineer. And so on March 12th, he did send us some comments saying that he had concerns about the existing paved access road radii and that they need to be increased in order to support the traffic loading and associated turning movements into and out of the site. The existing turning movements extend outside of the pavement and will exacerbate the deterioration of the road. So that's something that the applicant is working to address as part of the updated comments that updated materials that need to be submitted.
Thank you. Okay. Continuing on with the process, is there anyone in the audience who would like to, from the public, who would like to make a comment on this project? I see one hand.
Yes, sir. May I?
Yeah, please.
Mayor, board members, ladies. My name's Jim Manley. I live in Sullivan. I am the major abutter to this property. And I just want to share some concerns after reviewing the package that's on your site, okay? First of all, the hillside in question has a name. It's not some anonymous hill. It's Nims Hill. It's a living ecosystem with a long history. In fact, it's named after a Shale Nims Sr. who bought the land in 1771 and actually was killed in the Battle of Bunker Hill, which I find very interesting, okay? Many generations of the family have lived there in that locale afterwards, okay? Some key points, okay? This is a very serious regional activity which will have potentially negative impact to the community and residents within a half-mile radius, as well as permanent consequences to the character and nature of Nims Hill, the gateway to the city of Keene. I'd like you guys to consider that. If you're traveling southbound on Route 9 into Keene, this is your gateway. Negative impacts to the residents include unsightliness, vibration, sound and dust, potential contamination of wells, all of which are detrimental to property values. I've submitted a separate sheet where I've gone through the entire set of regs and called out those that I think are appropriate. Already very visible and negatively impacting the viewshed of the southbound Route 9 travelers into Keene, the proposed project would literally obliterate the southern knoll of Nims Hill, okay, with cliffs approaching 250 to 300 feet high, further impacting the aesthetic quality of the area, once again mentioned in your planning objectives. safe to say that when traveling along Route 9 from I-89 to Vermont, this would be by far the most unsightly view of that entire journey. It's pretty placid otherwise. The potential for acid mine drainage is real, as described in the acid mine drainage report, the independent fieldstone assessment, and the Southwest Regional Planning Commission's letter to you all. Okay? In addition, as was noted in the Conservation Commission meeting of 17 March, the potential exists for the gravel to be generated by the planned expansion to literally become a carrier of acid drainage / heavy metals to the users of that gravel. And that's what Murray had alluded to earlier. Okay. First of all, this is a 13-year project, 13 years, okay? A proposed blasting plan for the duration of the project has not been provided. Potentially impacted residents have no way of knowing at the moment how often or to what extent blasting will occur. This project is largely unknown to the immediate and greater community. I think I'm the only one here talking to this.
Sorry.
Okay. Thank you for the background music.
Yeah.
But again, this project is largely unknown to the community, and especially those living within that half-mile impact zone. Actually, it's interesting because the regs say a half mile, and sheet 4 here has a radius of a mile, or excuse me, a diameter of a mile. So I'm not sure what's up with that, but the regs say 1/2 mile. I would, prior to further public hearings and potential approval, potentially impacted residents should be notified as to the extended duration of this project and its potential for adverse impacts and given a chance to express their concerns. Obviously, the word's not gotten out. It's important to note that G2 Holdings has initiated excavations in both Keene and Sullivan without permitting, and that at least one complaint is outstanding with the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services in that regard. In addition, at the Conservation Committee meeting, Granite Engineering, this gentleman here, asserted that it is impossible to see the G2 quarry activities from Route 9. I sent you guys a separate package generated with Street View from Google Map, okay? It's absolutely, you could see what's there now with the 50-foot cliffs. What's it going to look like with 300-foot cliffs? Let me just make a note here for those engineers that cannot read maps. This is actually West Hill. And so I ask you to consider what an activity of this size, how you would feel about that if virtually all the residents of downtown Keene could see that. Okay. The other pictures are actually of Nims Hill. So, what are some of my recommended actions? Okay, as with many planning projects, a visualization of the final project should be provided. I saw this last month. I recommend an animated drive-through of the view shed starting at Sullivan County Store to the entrance of the Army Corps of Engineer Otterbrook Lake. Okay, be constructed to visualize both the current impact that could be seen, since they're in denial of this, and the impact should this plan be approved. 2, I think a proposed blasting plan for the duration of the project should be provided. Again, this is 13 years plus. 3, in order to increase awareness and transparency, this project should appear at minimum in the Sentinel, and that all residents within the potentially impacted half-mile radius be contacted as soon as possible, advising them of the potentially negative consequences of this project, along with a proposed blasting plan should it be approved. And again, this is in the regulations. It says that that the applicant should identify all the wells, not post-applicant, but the applicant. This has not been done. Lastly, given that the potential exists for acid mine drainage and subsequent leaching of heavy metals into water supplies exist, that this potential be further studied by independent third parties prior to approval. I mean, these guys have vested interests, right? In addition, the possibility of material extracted from the site being a carrier of acid and heavy metals should also be investigated, as the Conservation Commission had recommended. So, Yeah, and once again, this is West Hill. This is not Nims Hill. The other pictures are all of Nims Hill, and you should have approximately 3 or 4 attachments from me detailing this stuff. So thank you for this opportunity.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hanley. Someone else would like to comment on the application?
Yes.
Yeah, please come forward.
I'm going to take a big breath because I was not planning to speak to these people. Hi, Brent. Hi, Cody. I'm a Gilsum resident.
Yeah, could you just please state your name and address?
It's Heidi Bukowski. I live at 58 Eaton Hill, Gilsum Road. I also live above the excavation pit of the Gordon Brothers in Gilsum. When they came to our planning board, we were presented with this information on what was going to happen. There were obviously drawings or obviously information. But anybody who's interested in knowing what's going to happen, go to Gilsum and take a look. I really am unhappy with what has happened to my road, what's happening below. We actually have had somebody who's a resident have their concrete floor be cracked. We were never informed of when the blasting was going to occur. We've had animals and people be shocked by this, and we're just supposed to be accepting of it. I know that Cody went to speak to people, and that's helpful, but it's just very much a change of our environment. And I just felt you all should know, and I didn't know I'd be speaking about this. So thank you.
Thank you. I don't know. I guess I must have. Okay, anyone else? All right, so with that, I will close the public portion of this meeting for this agenda item. And I think, if I understood the applicant correctly, it's your desire to continue to next month?
Do we have a chance to rebut any of the testimony that we heard tonight, or would you want us to defer to the next meeting?
Sure, I'll give you 3 minutes.
Okay. I mean, it's up to the
No,
board.
that's fine.
We didn't
Yeah,
know
that's okay.
if you want to hear
Yep.
more about it, or. if
Sure,
you're looking
no,
to
that's
move
all right.
So I believe there was a packet sent to you guys from some abutter testimony. There are snapshots on Route 3 traveling 55 miles an hour that you will see this site. We don't believe ledge is unsightly, pretty common in New Hampshire. That's how we extract a lot of the rock that we construct with, and the roads and the base and all that type of stuff. But there are situations where you may be able to see it. It's majority of it, though, is hidden. It's not like the other area town that was in your packet. It is hidden from most view. Each period that we referred to is the reason that it's broken out into phases or periods is it does give the city an opportunity to review that period before it closes. Staff would do a site walk. They would see how everything was done, see if there was anything that we wanted to tweak, and they would actually come back before this board before we moved on to the next one. The bond would be posted, reclamation would be occurred, and then we'd go to the next phase once staff and once the city was okay with moving on. This is a master plan. This is showing what our intent is, but obviously there's a lot of staff oversight and there's planning board oversight through the entire process. Similarly in Gilsum, there are notifications that are sent out according to the blasting. It's state law. It's the blasters requirements. We had well monitoring testing. I know the third party. I was sent all the documents. I had to distribute them to DES. It is a very, very well-regulated industry from multiple facets. DES, the town, third-party oversight. There's a ton of people looking at these sites. If there's more that the town wants to implement or the city wants to implement, we'll certainly be working with the planning board and with city staff. There are not 300-foot cliffs out here. Like we mentioned in the presentation, there's 50-foot segments as you kind of work back. And Following more on Gilsum. Gilsum is a pit that was approved. I don't really know why we're talking about it tonight, but it was approved by DES. It was approved by the town. We followed everything like we would this project. So with that said, I'll hand it back to you, Mr. Chair. But if you guys have any questions, any comments, we have people here tonight. We can bring people back next time. We want to make sure you guys feel comfortable.
Thank you. Board members have any questions at this point? Okay, so let me just, to be clear, you guys are fine with a continuance at this point? Okay. So I will entertain a motion.
I would like to move to continue PB-2024-20 to the May 27, 2025 Planning Board meeting at 6:30 PM in the City Hall, second floor, council chambers.
Thank you, Mayor. Questions, comments? We're continuing for 2 meetings? Okay, thank you. Other questions or comments? So we'll call the vote. All those in favor of continuance of PB 2024-20 to the May Planning Board meeting, please indicate. Any opposed? Okay, continuance is granted. Thank you. Thank you for the information, and we'll see you again.
Appreciate your time.
I will just give them a second to clear out, and then we'll move on to the next item. He had engineers and geologists and hydrologists, yeah. Technical experts. I think they overestimated our capability. Okay. I think, Mary, would you recommend that we just handle the boundary line adjustment and the major site plan all together?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I believe it's really all one project. So if you're comfortable doing that as a board, it will need to be 2 different motions at the
Correct.
end, but yep.
Got it. Good. Okay, so then, I guess the main event is coming now. So we have actually 2 separate applications. One is PB-2025-05, Cedar Crest and Monadnock View Cemetery, a boundary line adjustment, 521 Park Ave and 91 Maple Ave. Applicant Revision Energy, on behalf of owners Cedar Crest and the City of Keene, proposes a lot line adjustment that would transfer approximately 1.7 acres of land from the approximately 46-acre parcel located at 521 Park Ave, that's tax map plat number 227-027-000, to the approximately 5-acre parcel located at 91 Maple Ave, TMP number 227-018-000. The Cedar Crest site is located in the low-density district, and the cemetery is located in the conservation district. Okay, so that's one half, the boundary line adjustment. The second half is PB-2025-04, Cedar Crest and Monadnock View Cemetery, a major site plan and solar energy system conditional use permit. 521 Park Ave and 91 Maple Ave. Applicant Revision Energy, Inc., on behalf of owners Cedar Crest, Inc. and the City of Keene, proposes to install a medium-scale solar energy system on approximately 1.7 acres of undeveloped land located at 521 Park Ave. TMP number 227-027-000, to provide power to the Cedar Crest facility located at 91 Maple Ave, TMP number 227-018-000. The city property is approximately 46 acres in size and is located in the Conservation District, and the Cedar Crest property is approximately 5 acres in size and is located in the Low Density District. Okay. At this time, I'll ask staff if you have a recommendation for completeness of the application.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Megan Fortson, planner. So there will be 2 completeness votes, one for the boundary line adjustment and one for the site plan and solar CUP applications. In regards to the boundary line adjustment, the applicant has requested an exemption from submitting all technical reports as well as a plan showing the meets and bounds of all parcels. After reviewing each request, planning staff have made the preliminary determination that granting the requested exemptions would have no bearing on the merits of the application and recommends that the board accept the application as complete.
Okay, so let's act on that. I'll entertain a motion to accept the boundary line adjustment as complete.
I'd like to move to accept PB-2025-05 as complete.
Second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Rangel. Questions, comments? Hearing none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor of PB-2025-05, boundary line adjustment, as being, the application being complete, please indicate so. Any opposed? Application is considered complete. Now let's move to the major site plan and CUP, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So for the site plan and the conditional use permit, the applicant has requested exemptions from submitting a plan showing the grading and limits of clearing, a lighting plan, a decommissioning plan, traffic analysis, soil analysis, historic evaluation, screening analysis, and architectural and visual appearance analysis. Once again, planning staff have made the preliminary determination that granting the requested exemptions would have no bearing on the merits of the application and recommends that the board accept the application as complete.
Thank you. Motion?
I'd like to move to accept PB-2025-04 as complete.
Second?
Second.
Mr. Rangel, thank you. Any comments, questions regarding the completeness of the application? Seeing none, let's move to a vote. All those in favor of PB-2025-04 as being complete, please indicate. Any opposed? Okay. Major site plan and CUP is complete. Thank you. All right. So at this time, I would ask the applicant to present. Hopefully that's not an issue doing them both together.
Nope, that would be fine, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is Megan Yulin. I am a solar project developer with Revision Energy. We are a local employee-owned solar company and a certified B Corporation, which means that our projects are driven by benefits to people and the planet, not just profits. We've been in business over 20 years and have been very fortunate to work with the City of Keene in a number of different capacities through municipal projects and commercial and residential projects for residents of the community. I'm here tonight with.
Excuse me
our-
one second. May I just ask if if the green light is on in your?
Oh, it is on. I
Okay,
can
good.
move it closer. I'm here tonight with our surveyor, Russ Huntley of Huntley Survey and Design, with representatives from Cedar Crest, Jim Yanisi and Bethany LeClaire, and representatives from the city that have been our liaisons on the project. Andy Bohannon and Kara Fisk-Hennessy are here as well. I used to start off with just a little bit of the background for the project. For the past year or so, we've been working with Cedar Crest and the city of Keene to develop, develop a project that would offset Cedar Crest's electricity use. And this came about out of an agreement that we had with the city of Keene to explore solar development on several parcels of city-owned land. And this was to further the city's goal of reaching 100% renewable energy use by 2030, as well as a stated goal of that agreement was to provide opportunities for nonprofits that didn't have the land space to be able to benefit from solar energy systems as energy off-takers and as system owners. And that's exactly the case for Cedar Crest. They have a small parcel of 5 acres, and as a specialized medical and pediatric facility, they have a high electricity load that's required to provide those critical services to the community. So they don't have opportunity on their current parcel to build a solar energy system of a size that would reasonably offset, a significant portion of their electric load. And the same is true for the for a roof-mounted system. They don't have a roof of the scale or size necessary to provide that opportunity. So if they wanted to pursue solar energy, and we have spoken with them in past years about opportunities, they would really need to pursue an off-site system. And off-site solar these days in New Hampshire has become quite challenging with net metering changes, and it's difficult to provide systems at this scale that really do provide the benefits needed to local businesses and nonprofits. When we have an off-site system, typically that means that it is a front-of-the-meter system and is exporting electricity directly to the grid, which reduces the benefit to the ultimate purchaser of the net metering credits. This opportunity is unique in that Cedar Crest directly abuts the city property, and we have the opportunity to tie the system in directly behind Cedar Crest meter, which provides them a significant additional benefit. It reduces their demand, and it allows their electricity load to be reduced directly by the solar versus just receiving a credit on their electricity bill for the supply costs. And that's really what makes the project possible here in this location as well. The city had designated a portion of the Monadnock View Cemetery as a priority for solar development, and without the direct connection to Cedar Crest, we would have been required to bring in a new 3-phase power line that is very costly and likely would not be supported by a system of this size. The reason that we are pursuing a boundary line adjustment, this was suggested to us, one, to simplify the site ownership and site control going forwards rather than a long-term lease, minimum 25 years, systems last up to 40 typically. It's a one-time transaction where Cedar Crest will purchase the land from the city necessary to install the array. And secondly, the city offers solar energy property tax exemptions for residents and businesses, which means that when you install a solar array, you're not taxed on that property. Additionally, Cedar Crest is a nonprofit. Under the original plan, we intended to have a lease agreement with the city, but in that scenario, because this is a system that's investor-owned, Cedar Crest is purchasing the electricity from it at a discount. We weren't going to be able to realize that property tax exemption for Cedar Crest under the original lease plan. So those were the two criteria that led us to pursuing a boundary line adjustment. As far as the project siting, the location of the project was chosen to meet the dimensional requirements of the ordinance. I understand that this has has caused some disappointment from some of the community members, especially those that have used the community gardens, and I'm sure we'll get to that in the remaining hearing. But I wanted to, speak a little bit to the siting because, originally we had proposed it east of where it is located now, to avoid those impacts to the garden. But with the boundary line adjustment, it was very important for us to be able to draw the new lot so that it did meet the zoning requirements and the 50-foot setback requirements. It's not possible, we didn't feel it was feasible for us to successfully have a hardship to get a dimensional variance because we're drawing a new property line. So that was key. And as we've proposed it now, if we were in the original location and we drew the boundary lines to meet those dimensional requirements, we would have had a larger impact on the garden space without the opportunity to redevelop those gardens. So we've sited it to the very northwest corner where it is furthest out of visibility as it can be from the cemetery property. And with the city, and we have, the city has proposed a relocation plan that we'll speak about more. And let's see. So as far as the boundary line adjustment specifics, it affects 91 Maple Ave and 521 Park Ave, and transfers 1.69 acres in the conservation district from the city of Keene to Cedar Crest. The Cedar Crest parcel would increase from 5.01 acres to 6.7 acres and will contain lands in the low density and conservation district. And then the city parcel decreases from 46 acres to 44.3 acres and remains fully within the conservation district. The access points to the property remain as existing. We're not proposing any new driveways or access ways. And as suggested earlier, we did request an exemption from showing the full meets and bounds due to the size of the city property relative to the subject area. As far as the standards for the boundary line adjustment, it meets the criteria of 20.2.1 lots, and that the area of both adjusted lots will remain greater than 5 acres. They both meet the minimum required lot width of 200 feet at the building line, and both allow the proposed development to meet the required 50-foot setbacks. We're not impacting the minimum road frontage for either parcel, and we are not impacting any discontinued roads. 20.2.2, the character of land for subdivision. The boundary line the area proposed for the BLA is a flat field suitable for development. It is absent of hazardous conditions that would pose a danger to health and safety. 20.2.3, scattered or premature development. It does not promote either of these conditions as the solar development is proposed directly adjacent to the existing facility that will benefit from the electricity produced, and the array itself does not make use of or further burden town services. We have not proposed significant landscape alterations in terms of tree line. We don't require grading or significant clearing, and don't impact any scenic points, steep slopes, stone walls, or historic landmarks, or any primary or secondary conservation areas that are identified in section 20.3.4. For monumentation, 5/8-inch aluminum capped rebar will be set at all new corners. For flood areas, we do not impact them. For fire protection and water supply, the array does not require additional fire protection or water supply. However, we will provide Knox padlocks at the gates to provide access for the fire department in an event of emergency. And then as for utilities, we do not require city water or sewer, and all electrical connections are provided for by the project. That, I guess, covers the major points on the boundary line adjustment. Well, we have Russ up here. I don't know if there are any questions in particular to this application that would be worth addressing, and then, or if it would be better for me to just kind of continue on with the rest of the.
Yeah, why don't you continue on with the
Okay.
major site plan,
Great.
and then we'll
Okay.
kind of,
So the site plan, let's see, I have it here. That would be great. Thank you. The proposed solar development is a 333.2 kW, 230 kW AC, fixed tilt ground mounted solar array. That means the rows of the panels are fixed, they don't track with the sun, there's no movement. This array produces around 364,900 kilowatt hours of clean renewable electricity per year, and this will offset approximately 67% of Cedar Crest's existing electricity usage. The primary components of the system are the earth screws, which are the foundations. They're driven into the earth with relatively minimal disturbance, and we affix an aluminum racking system to those, and then the panels are affixed to the racking. The rows of panels are oriented at 212 degrees southwest on the site location to optimize the system size within that area and to reduce shading. And at their peak, the panels are approximately 13 feet tall, so they do meet the height requirements of the CUP. Let's see. The inverters, transformers, and electrical equipment are proposed to be located on the southern corner of the Cedar Crest building and screened by a vinyl privacy fence. And then, I guess back to the array itself, we've proposed a 6-foot agricultural fence, which is the standard fencing that we've used for comparable projects across our completed projects. And that is a wildlife fence, so it does allow for, small critters to pass through, and still allows for wildlife to make use of the array area as habitat. Currently, we have proposed reseeding the area with a conservation seed mix that does include clover, which has pollinator benefits. And we have proposed a small swale along the north and southeast sides of the array, which is intended to ensure there are no off-site stormwater impacts. When we evaluated this array for stormwater, actually, I guess I'll address that when I kind of get to the stormwater piece. But let's see. We'll have warning signage along the outside of the fence because of its proximity to public lands, and we expect construction to occur this summer 2025, and that it will take 3 to 4 months to complete. Let's see. So as far as the existing and proposed use, what's proposed is to, in collaboration with the city, relocate the current community gardens to the southwest of the proposed array location and redevelop this area as a solar energy system. For the solar energy system, conditional use permit criteria. This is considered a medium-scale solar energy system by the Land Development Code. It is approximately 33,000 square feet. As for the siting, 16.2.1, the lot will be greater than 5 acres once the boundary line adjustment occurs, and the solar footprint is under 1 acre, so it therefore meets the requirement for siting. For height, this system does meet the required height constraints, does not exceed 15 feet. We submitted elevation drawings with those dimensions. The setbacks required in the conservation district are 50 feet, and we have met those. We are at 50 feet on the northeast boundary line and at 52 feet on the southeast and southwest, just to allow a little bit of a buffer in case there are any construction variances. The lot coverage was calculated to include all of the ground-mounted components of the solar energy system, including the solar panels and the transformer, but excluding access aisles, roads, and fencing. The inverters are not ground-mounted, they are wall-mounted, so we did not include those in the calculation. And the solar land coverage was equal to 15% and does not exceed the 70% limitation when considering the entirety of the lot area. As far as 16.2.5 visual buffer, we came before this board last month for advice and comment on this criteria. And this project location has been cited to reasonably minimize the view of the system from surrounding properties and public rights of way. It's located at the very rear northwest corner of the Monadnock View Cemetery, where there's very limited visibility from adjacent parcels. The visual impact is mitigated through the preservation of existing vegetation. We have shown that on our site plan, both on the northern side with the boundary between the First Baptist Church and the City of Keene lands, and then on the City of Keene lands there are clusters of existing pines to the southeast that will remain. And there is a buffer along the City of Keene and Parkwood Apartments property line with mature pines and carports that block visibility of the array area. The city submitted a letter in support of the existing screening and its suitability to provide that visual buffer, considering the scale of the city property, 46 acres. The visibility is reasonably minimized with the vegetation that is shown. And we haven't proposed any new landscaping for the creation of a new visual buffer. As far as the environmental criteria, we haven't proposed any tree clearing, and the solar panels are spaced 20 feet apart, which more than meet the requirement to exceed the width of a single panel collector row, which is approximately 12 feet. The area underneath, as stated, will be revegetated with a conservation mix that allows for the growth of vegetation and capture of rainfall. For noise and glare, the inverters are rated up to 60 dBA during daylight hours. They only operate during daylight hours, so there will not be any noise impacts during evening hours, and they do meet the criteria in the Land Development Code for noise. They are also over 50 feet from any property line, and they will be enclosed by a vinyl privacy buffer. As for security, we recognize that there were some comments questioning the suitability of the fence to keep out trespassers. We designed the fences for our systems to code requirements, and we haven't had any instances of upsizing our fencing product to address trespass or vandalism. Those instances are relatively rare, and like anything, house or solar array, if somebody really wants to get in, they'll find a way to get in. So we believe that the perimeter fence should be suitable to keep the system secure, but I'm happy to answer additional questions on that. As far as the utility interconnection requirements, all of the conduit will be buried, meeting the criteria to have underground lines. And the decommissioning plan was non-applicable for a medium-scale solar array. As far as the drainage requirements, we did submit an updated drainage plan. When we originally designed the project, this area is relatively flat. There's a small corner on the northeast that does slope per the topography shown. The panels were just on the line of the New Hampshire DES threshold for sheet flow. And basically, if your panels are 60% or less to parallel, then it is considered that, stormwater will just sheet flow off the panels and won't change the drainage patterns. However, based on the comments from the city engineer, to make sure that we were not causing any off-site impacts, we did propose a shallow swale along the northeast and southeast sides. For erosion control, the system does not require a lot of grading or soil disturbance. There are wetlands on the city of Keene property. They are over 200 feet from the proposed development. We did include a grindings berm along the side of the array that faces the wetlands, but we did not feel it was in the threshold that New Hampshire DES requires double erosion control at 50 feet from the wetlands, so we felt that the ground disturbance and the distance was sufficient that we hope the erosion control berm proposed will suffice. And I would say the general sequence of this installation would be bringing in a crew that does the foundations install, then the racking and array structure would be built, and then the associated electrical, and we would install the stormwater swale at the end of the project when we are doing the reseeding and revegetation, so that it's not disturbed and erased by the project traffic. We have been working in depth with the Parks and Rec Department to discuss the coordination and timing of this installation so that it does not interrupt the cemetery operations. While the long-term access is shown to be via Cedar Crest lands, we do have an agreement with the city to access the array during construction through the cemetery roads, and we did in our comments, provide some additional details on how the roads would, how the care and repair of the city property would be addressed. Let's see. And let's see, as far as additional site development standards, we did submit a glare statement and a kind of certification from the manufacturer. The panels are, they have an anti-reflective surface that is generally shown, to be less reflective than standing water. So we include that with our application, and I believe, lost my place here in my notes, but I believe that kind of covers the general overview of the project, so I am happy to address questions, and we can also bring up members of the city team or Cedar Crest team as well to help with questions if needed.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Ullman. I'll ask the board members if any board members have questions for the applicant. Mr. Cost?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple. I'm wondering about the sound that comes out of the transformers and other electronic equipment. It says it's minimal during the day.
Mhm.
What does that mean? I mean, is it a Is it like a hum? Is it a,
Yeah, it's a hum.
and will people visiting the cemetery nearby, will they hear it?
They won't. It's a sufficient distance that they should not hear anything as far as the system operation. In addition to both of those pieces of equipment being behind a vinyl privacy fence, it's kind of like the hum that we're hearing right now. It's not significant when you're at a distance.
Okay. I think I have some more questions, but I'm going to wait
Sure.
a bit. Thanks. I have a few more questions, but I'm going to wait a little bit till we
Okay.
get into it.
I have a quick question with respect to the buried conduit. Is that, I couldn't quite tell from the drawings, that's all on Cedar Crest property now?
Yes, it would be entirely on Cedar Crest lands. It is shown on the northwest side, off of the most southern array panel. Goes directly across. The conduit location is coming across here, and the new proposed property line is further south of that. And then additionally, there is an arrow conduit on Cedar Crest lands.
Okay, thanks. I assumed that was the case, but it wasn't obvious to me on the drawing.
Thank you.
Other questions? Mr. Hafer?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm curious if the undeveloped land without gardens on it to the southwest, I guess that would be, was that seriously considered for this array? Is there anything particularly unsuitable about that grassy area there that makes it inappropriate for a solar array of this size?
Though that was the original proposed location of the array. When we came to the city to kind of finalize agreements, we did run into that question of the solar energy property tax exemption. If we were to, and because, Cedar Crest intends to purchase the lands for the array, drawing that lot to meet the dimensional requirements is required by the Land Development Code. We can't draw a non-conforming lot. If we were to propose the array in that original location, meeting the 50-foot setbacks, we would have a greater impact. The array would need to extend further into the area where it's currently placed now, due to the shape and size of the field. So it is proposed to be located in the northwest. We can condense the array a little bit more, and it does provide that opportunity for redeveloping the gardens in the original field location. That was the driving reason behind the relocation, was to facilitate the boundary line adjustment.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move to the staff report at this time. Thank you.
Oh, okay, so we're just going the other way. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Megan Fortson, planner. I'm going to try to keep this relatively brief. I think that Ms. Yulin and Mr. Huntley did a very thorough job of going through all of the applicable standards. I'm going to provide you with just a little bit of additional context. As a reminder, this is 3 different types of applications. It is the boundary line adjustment for the transfer of 1.7 acres from the 46-acre cemetery city-owned parcel to the currently 5-acre parcel owned by Cedar Crest. The 2 parcels are zoned differently, so Cedar Crest is currently entirely located within the low-density district, and the cemetery parcel is located in the conservation district. So the portion of land proposed to be transferred to Cedar Crest is going to be in conservation. So that parcel will now be split zoned following the boundary line adjustment. It doesn't really impact anything. It just means that if there's future development review of that portion of the parcel, there's going to be two different zoning district requirements that apply to those two different portions of the lot. So as Ms. Yulin had stated, they are proposing to construct a medium-scale solar array that's going to consist of 560 individual solar panels. A variance was granted by the zoning board at their March 3rd meeting of this year. I had mentioned that that portion of the parcel to be developed is located in the conservation district, and the conservation district does not allow for a ground-mounted solar array as a primary use. So they were granted a variance from the zoning board to allow for that use. And given the fact that the solar array proposed to be installed is roughly 33,000 feet in size, it's classified as a medium-scale solar array. A medium-scale solar array is, I believe, between 2,000 square feet in size up to 1 acre. Ms. Brenner can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that that's what it is under Article 8 of our Land Development Code. And so that requires the submittal of a solar conditional use permit application and a major site plan application to document the site changes. And I believe that this is actually the first time the board has reviewed our solar energy system application. Planning staff did not feel that either of these applications had the potential for regional impact. And then in regards to department comments, I believe Ms. Yulin addressed the comments that we received from the police department, which were that they have concerns about the 6-foot-tall agricultural fence that's proposed to be installed around the perimeter of the array. The only other staff comment that we received was from code enforcement, and that was just as a reminder that a building permit is going to be required prior to the construction of the array. I'm going to quickly run through the CUP standards and site development standards that I think are notable, but I'm not going to go through every single one. In terms of setbacks, so that's outlined under Article 16 of the LDC, which is where your solar energy system standards are. As Ms. Yulin had noted, the proposed array is going to be set back exactly 50 feet from a few of the property lines and 52 feet from one of the other property lines, and so because of that, planning staff are recommending that the board include a subsequent condition of approval related to the flagging of this setback line by a surveyor licensed in the state of New Hampshire, just to ensure that that setback is properly maintained during the course of construction. Otherwise, that standard has been met. In regards to the visual buffer, again, at your previous meeting, the board had provided the applicant with the preliminary feedback that you did not feel that formal screening was necessary. The proposed conditions plan does show the existing tree line and other vegetated areas that are proposed to be maintained to provide screening, but that's something, whether or not you feel like that visual buffer and the screening requirements have been met, will need to be discussed as part of your deliberation. In regards to the environmental section of your standards, which is 16.2.6, the narrative states that the disturbed areas will be revegetated with a conservation grass mix that's going to be suited to particularly solar installations. So as per usual, planning staff are recommending the submittal of a security to cover the cost of that conservation seed mix. That standard appears to be met. In terms of the security, as I mentioned, our police department did have concerns about the agricultural fencing that's proposed, so you're going to need to make a determination during your deliberation as to whether or not you feel that that's sufficient. In the staff report, we had noted that the city engineer had some concerns about the proposed stormwater measures. The applicant sort of explained to you that under the New Hampshire DES requirements, they have provided what is sufficient. And so when we worked back and forth with the city engineer on the application materials that were submitted, he was okay with that. So that standard has been met. Same thing in regards to sediment and erosion control. The city engineer was satisfied with what was being proposed as part of the sediment and erosion control measure. However, we do recommend that the security include the sediment and erosion control measures as well as the conservation seed mix to be installed, and that once the erosion control measures have been installed, that they be inspected prior to the commencement of site work. And the other thing I wanted to address was traffic and access management. Again, the applicant has stated that they have permission from the city of Keene to use the cemetery site to access the property during the course of construction. This we would like as a condition, or we would recommend, I should say, as a condition of approval, that the board include the submittal of documentation just formally stating that the applicant has that permission from the city of Keene. And then in addition to this, the city engineer did express interest or recommendations that the board include a condition of approval related to the addition of a note on the plan, because I believe the access aisle that's going to be used on the cemetery property to access the solar array site during the course of construction is currently gravel, and it's going to need to be somewhat improved to be used. And so city engineering staff would like to be part of that review process and make sure that it's modified properly. So those were the applicable standards. I'm going to quickly run through the recommended conditions of approval just so that they're fresh in your mind. For the boundary line adjustment, it's very much in line with what you typically have as your conditions of approval, including that the owner's signatures appear on the plan, the submittal of paper and Mylar copies of the plans, submittal of recording fees to cover the cost of recording the final plan, and then the inspection of the lot monuments. For the site plan and CUP, for the conditions precedent, we have the note related to the proposed upgrading of the temporary site access during the course of construction, having the owner's signatures appear on the plan, the submittal of the paper copies of the plans, the security to cover sediment and erosion control and site stabilization, and documentation that the boundary line adjustment has received final approval. And then subsequent to final approval, the recommended conditions of approval include the submittal of documentation demonstrating that the city of Keene has granted Cedar Crest the right to use the cemetery for temporary construction access prior to the issuance of a building permit, the flagging of that 50-foot setback line, and an inspection of that. And then, again, prior to commencement of site work, the installation of and inspection of the sedimentation and erosion control measures on the site. So I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Ms. Fortson. Board members have questions for staff?
Just
Yeah, sure.
that, in addition here, we would need to consider the height, fence height, and if 8 feet is better than 6 feet, we would add another condition. Is that right?
Correct, yeah. If you don't feel that the proposed screening is sufficient, I would recommend just discussing that with the applicant to see what they're amenable to. But yes, you could add that as a condition of approval, that, you know, the plans be updated to include a different fence detail if that's what you'd like to see.
So it's both, sorry, so it's both height and the type of fencing?
Yes. I believe, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, please.
I believe, I don't recall if Ms. Yulin addressed this in her presentation, but I think that what they're proposing for fencing, it's like she said, a 6-foot agricultural sort of like mesh fence, I believe is a standard fencing product that Revision uses for most of their projects and has used in the past for other solar arrays. So I believe that's why they're comfortable proposing that.
Ms. Berner, can you add to that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to note for the board, in your consideration of the comments around the fence, the agricultural fence has less of a visual impact than some of the alternatives. So like a chain link fence would have a bigger visual impact. So that would be kind of the trade-off there. I think a chain link fence could be a more secure fence. I'm not sure, about wildlife passage through a chain link fence, but I do know that the visual impact would be a little bit higher from that. but it would be technically, more secure. So that would just be something to consider in your deliberation.
And
Thank you.
perhaps if the city staff are going to address this in some manner, they could address that, what their suggestion would be. I see a couple of city staff here that had to be involved in this agreement, that would be worth hearing what their preference is.
Yeah, I think we'll need to do that. Go ahead, Ms. Fortson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make one more comment that I neglected to, or disclaimer, I guess I'll say, that I neglected to include in the beginning part of my presentation, and that is that obviously you have copies of the letters that have been received from members of the public who are concerned about this proposal, and I want to just emphasize that while this array is going to impact the community garden that's currently located on a portion of this lot, that is being handled independently of this proposal. So you as the planning board are reviewing this proposal for compliance with the applicable regulations. So your subdivision standards, your site development standards under Article 21 of the Land Development Code, as well as the solar conditional use permit standards that I was mentioning earlier. So just wanted to remind you that while we will receive testimony related to the community garden, that's not something that the board is actually deliberating or providing feedback on during the course of this meeting.
Thank you. Mr. Cost.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You talked about there's permission during construction to use the cemetery road, and that's coordinated. Will that be coordinated with interments and things like that? So when there is a family, the construction will stop, it'll be quiet and all of that. Is there a way to coordinate that?
That, I don't know the answer to that question. That would be a coordination that would have to happen between the Parks and Recreation Department and the construction team that's out on the site. I'm sure that Ms. Fisk-Hennessy or Mr. Bohannon can probably provide some further clarification on that during the public comment portion of the meeting if you wanted to ask for clarification.
Thank you.
I just want to go back to the fence for a minute. The regulation says the maximum height of the fence can be 8 feet, and they're recommending 6 feet. Do you have any further insight as to the police department's issue? Is it they'd be happy with an 8-foot agricultural fence, or
So,
do you know specifically?
yeah, I think that their main concern is not necessarily the height of the fence. I think if fencing were being proposed, that would sort of assuage the concerns of the police department. It would probably be chain link fencing with, honestly, like some barbed wire on the top, because I think that they're concerned about people hopping over the fence and being within the area of the solar array. So I don't know if I think making it taller would probably help some. I don't know that it would completely get rid of their concerns.
Okay, thank you. Other questions for staff? Thank you, Ms. Fortson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. I appreciate everyone's patience. May I just see by a show of hands who would like to comment during the public portion? So, in order for everyone's voice to be heard, I'm going to ask that we limit comments to a maximum of 3 minutes. I'm going to need staff to help time on that. Okay. And I would just like, just to remind folks, when you come up, you can either sit and use a microphone or stand at the standing microphone. Just give us your name and address, and be happy to start the process now. So I guess we'll start from the rear. Sir, in the back. Whichever one you would like.
Peter Hansel, 61 Bradford Road in Keene. I have been a member of the Energy and Climate Committee of the City of Keene, and have to say that it excites me to see a solar project going forward at this time. We have one of the first things that our committee did was try to identify sites within the City of Keene that could take solar arrays, preferably on city land, but also on other parcels that aren't city-owned land. And I can remember meeting with Andy Bohannon several years ago to talk about the Monadnock View Cemetery as a potential site. So I just want to frame my comments with that background. We, as a city committee, devoted to implementing the city's resolution to achieve 100% renewable energy for electricity by 2030, we need all of the solar arrays that we can get in our city. And so I compliment you on looking at solar arrays like this. It is one of the first sites, ground-mounted sites like this that we've seen. We've seen a number of rooftop sites, but ground-mounted, we're going to have to look at all sites. When we first talked in identifying this site, we thought we were convinced that there was plenty of room for a solar array that would not impact the community gardens that were there. I was disappointed when I heard that had changed, and possibly even more disappointed when I heard that change had not been communicated with people in the community that were involved in that community garden. That, I think, is unfortunate, and I think that we as a city need to work hard to try to rectify that miscommunication or lack of coordination. I know that, technically this hearing is about the solar array and not about the community garden. The two are interconnected, however, and I know we're probably going to get a number of comments about that interconnection. I just want to make my views clear that if there's anything that we as a city can do to coordinate and rectify this problem, we should bend over backwards to do so. If it means, I even thought of proposing some sort of agrivoltaic solution where you could have a combination of the two. I'm not sure that would work on this site, but it's something that communities all over the country are starting to do, and I see my time is up. But I just encourage you to work diligently with the community members who have put in a lot of time to develop this site, and work with them to develop another site. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I, Mr. Bohannon, if you would like to come forward, maybe we can address this elephant in the room.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Board, Andy Bohannon, Deputy City Manager. So as it's been alluded to tonight, this project has actually been in the works for quite so many years, related to the first iteration of the proposal going in the front of the off of Maple Avenue or Park Avenue, and that just wouldn't work related to the future development of Monadnock View Cemetery, and that's the only cemetery lands we have left within the city. So we proposed at first on the side, and then as we began to work through our negotiations with Revision, it became clear that it was going to be very difficult and very lengthy process and very costly to find the direct path to provide the solar to Cedar Crest. So in order to do that, we looked at the least resistant path to that, and the idea of moving over slightly, because if we had gone with the original, actually more of the gardens would have been taken, so there wasn't any room for growth at that particular time. So by moving over, we created a new footprint with our engineering department that would provide more gardens. It provides greater opportunity for irrigation. We've worked with the community gardeners in recent years, the city council has accepted the donation of the irrigation, the funding for that. We installed that. We will reallocate that. There is also a storage shed that was accepted. We will move that. That was donated by Benson Wood. So those two items alone were the only things donated related to that particular site. A lot of individuals use that particular site as they sign an agreement with the city of Keene. It's $25 a year to plant their gardens, and we work with them as best we can. In the last 8 years, we've been fairly successful with the help of Roland Russell in kind of growing that program, along with Antioch University Community Garden Program. We're very thankful for all of those efforts. With this particular project, I wanted to make sure that there was a process and planning board going through all of those variant steps through the zoning board and planning board, really to make sure that the project was viable and going to go through before really communicating back to them saying that, there's not going to be a season this year. We did introduce that it was possible last fall that was possibly not going to be the case for this year, but we didn't know at that time just because. So I realize I'm out of time, but I do think it's important that Kara Fisk-Hennessy, our Parks and Recreation Director, give a little insight as well. And if we need to go further, I do want to address the question related to cemetery operations. So we've been working very closely with Revision to understand the schedules. The reason for the delay to July was because of May and June are our heaviest or our most burial time. We average about 16 burials during those months. It does start to slow down a little bit in July historically. So we do have this information. We will be knowing the general times and when the burials do happen. We receive 48 hours notice, and we will be in communication with them to let them be aware that from this time frame, we'll ask you to stop construction, and they've been very agreeable to that. So just wanted to make note of that.
So with that, Kara Fisk-Hennessy, Parks and Recreation Director. We have been, since the variance process happened at the end of last month, beginning of this month, we have had 2 community garden meetings with select community gardeners, including the Cheshire Conservation District and our Antioch Gardening Ambassador, which is how I've titled Roland. I'm not sure how else to title him. And we've also done a lot of legwork in terms of looking at the historical data. We know that as land use has changed, garden plots have shifted in location, size, and opportunity for our Keene community. So that is where our gardens have been hosted for decades, and we understand that. This gives us a unique opportunity to relocate the gardens and improve access and improve opportunity for more people within our community to actually garden as part of community gardens. Currently, we have 17 community gardeners. There are 39 plots that are being used of the 61 existing in its current location. The number of Keene resident plots are 35. The number of non-Keene resident plots are 4. And we have 12 open plots. The current plot size is 19 by 25. What we are proposing moving forward is a combination of new opportunity. So we are proposing in the space that was originally planned for the solar array, 68 new 20 by 20 plots 24 new 10 by 10 plots, which we are naming kitchen plots, 9 4 by 8 raised beds, and a 500 square foot pollinator garden. That total square footage equals 29,888 square feet, and that is an improvement from the 61 plots that we currently have in our existing community garden structure, which the total square footage available there is 28,975 square feet. We are also working with Cheshire Conservation District and Antioch to try to identify alternate spaces for this year, because we understand that the communication was late in terms of starting seeds. We do have a couple of feelers out there, Stonewall Farm and Cheshire Medical Center, and I am more than happy, more than willing to assist with follow-up efforts between the Cheshire Conservation District, Antioch, and Keene Parks and Recreation. And yeah, I think that is all that I have. If you have
Yeah.
any questions, I'm more
And just
than
to
willing
address the other question related to the fence, there is a, the conservation, I think it's conservation fence, is a little bit more open, allows the wildlife to get through. If there was a chain link fence that was, say, 8 feet high, it would be very noticeable, but certainly would keep the wildlife out of their particular area. So for us, that space is very minimally used. Not a lot of people go back there other than the gardeners, occasional staff, and so it's not really, a zone that has a lot of traffic.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, sorry.
Sorry, Andy, but I take from your comment, I just want to clear direction that from your comment, I'm not sure if the 8-foot is more satisfactory.
If they go with the conservation fence, I think the 8-foot might be, would be more satisfactory, related to the police department. There's not a lot of individuals back there. I don't see it as a high security concern. But if that was the will of the planning board, I do think 6 is sufficient, but 8 would just be a little bit more secure. It's a conservation fence, so it's not like it's, a chain link fence, which is a lot more sturdy. This is a little bit more open, and it's meant for people or animals to go through. So I'm not sure the sturdiness or the thickness of the wire used in a fence like that. Just not so familiar, but I don't see an 8-foot making a huge impact.
So it would provide greater security. It's not a visual impact. And so for those couple of reasons, it's a preferred.
I think it's more a visual preference than it is anything else. I don't think 8 feet is going to make a huge difference on the fencing. 2 feet at 6 feet. I honestly just don't see a significant difference between 6 and 8 feet on a conservation fence. I do on a chain link fence, but on a conservation fence, if I'm not mistaken, from the pictures that I've seen, it's not going to be a great impact.
And a conservation fence is preferable to you.
It would certainly allow the wildlife to get through. There's a lot of critters that go out through there. I know the gardeners don't like the critters, for sure. But they're out there, they're present. So they would certainly keep the deer. I would think, do they keep the deer out? I'm unfamiliar with super unfamiliar with.
Is it okay if
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I could just address the fence briefly. As far as the conservation fence, yes, it would keep large animals out of the array. Typically,
I'm having trouble.
sure. Typically, the agricultural fence has larger openings at the bottom that might be, 6x6 openings, and they narrow as you get higher on the fence, so it allows for passage on the lower levels. From our personal experience with the fence, we don't feel that a 6-foot agricultural fence is particularly scalable for somebody looking to get in. And I actually might posit that a chain link fence has more grips and opportunities to kind of vault over it. But as far as our fencing products go, we don't install an 8-foot fence on any of our solar arrays, even, big 5 megawatt arrays, the maximum fence size that we're installing is 7 feet in any case, and that would be taller than we typically do for an array of this size. I mean, we appreciate wanting to keep the public out of the array. All of the electrical closures within the array are secure. If somebody did get in the array, it should not be a public safety hazard when properly installed. However, any increase in fence size that you have adds cost to the project. So I would say that the maximum height that we could possibly, that we have gone on a project before is 7 feet. But we would really strongly encourage the 6-foot fence here because it's not a high traffic area. We have a system of similar size in Concord that did have a history of loitering in that area and some vandalism. I don't know of any issues that they've had with folks, getting over that fence and into that array, if that's helpful.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Let's bring up some other folks then.
Thank you, Planning Board, staff, Mayor Khan. Roland Russell, 77 High Street. I have prepared my comments with input from some of the other gardeners. I'll try to get through them in 3 minutes or less. Just one quick comment about the fence. As long as the voles can get in and stay there, we're happy with it. We certainly commend Cedar Crest and the City of Keene for efforts to establish a solar array. Every move away from fossil fuel dependence is a step in the right direction. However, we respectfully suggest that there may be less complicated and perhaps less disruptive options to consider. We haven't been included in any of the meetings or deliberations that inform this plan. While we did meet with city staff 2 weeks ago, the second week of March, these plans, as you've heard, have been underway for a long time. There is considerable expertise in our community. Many of us have gardened for over 50 years. We are not technically landowners or abutters, but when you work a piece of land, it begins to own you. And so we have been very disappointed not to have had a voice up till this point. So this is actually our first opportunity to comment publicly in the city record on these plans. I want to make sure that we recognize that food security is a growing concern in our region. Lots of news even today about that in this region. Looking at the 2010 master plan, if solar arrays are a step towards energy independence, then community gardens are a step towards food sovereignty. I have all kinds of citations, I'm not going to read them, from the master plan about both food security, food sovereignty, and community gardens. I won't cite them because you probably have them imprinted on your memory by now. Cheshire County only produces about 5% of its own food. Much more needs to be done, and community and residential gardens can help, as they did in World War II, when in 1943 there were 330 30 by 50 plots at 13 sites, one of which has never been built on. We may be back. Nationwide, Victory Gardens produced about 40% of our fresh vegetables. In 1975, at our current location, there were 200 plots reserved with the waiting list. Can this generation carry forward that legacy? Our community garden has been in existence for over 50 years, as you've heard, with significant improvements to irrigation and other infrastructure, soil health, and ecosystems benefits of our pollinator beds, hedgerow, raspberry patch, as well as our gardeners' additions of native pollinator and perennial species to their plots. Much has been done over the last 5 years, especially with tens of thousands of dollars worth of external funding and donations, gardener contributions, and in-kind support, over 15,000 of which via the Cheshire County Conservation District to add infrastructure and tools, further build soil health, and create additional pollinator habitat. I would list all the other donating organizations, but I'm already almost out of time. It is naive to think that a new garden could be built, infrastructure moved, soil health improved to near our current state, and pollinator habitat reestablished without significant effort and expense on the part of the city. Soil ecosystems are ecosystems. We can't simply transfer the soil, for example, without disrupting the structure, the microorganisms in it, the health and vitality of the soil. We have gone no-till in order to preserve that in our current site. In April 2024, Keene Zoning Board unanimously approved variances to permit the installation of a solar array on undeveloped land adjacent to the community. We heard about that earlier. It was indicated at the October 21st, 2024 Conservation Commission meeting that the project was moving forward at that location. We would respectfully encourage reconsideration of the present plans to relocate the garden and take a careful look at whether those 2024 plans or others, it's been mentioned, agrivoltaics, I know you received a letter to that from one of our supporters, might better balance Cedar Crest needs with those of the gardens. In evaluating these, we should develop a complete cost-benefit analysis, garden included. Can all interested parties, including our gardeners, collaborate to come up with an alternative plan to bring before the Planning Commission at a later date? That is what we encourage you to do, is to take more time to consider the extraordinary impact on the garden as it is. We didn't even know that this meeting was going to happen, except one of our supporters told us. So we're running behind just to even get this information out to you. Imagine how all of our gardeners are running out of time to figure out what we can do in 2025 to grow our own food. For us, gardening is not a hobby, it's a necessity. Lastly, I'll say, in addition to food, we grow community at our community garden. We have tremendous expertise. We have heart, we have background knowledge, decades of background knowledge, and we get things done. Please don't squander that social capital that we've accumulated over the years. Thank you.
Is it possible to turn off the camera since he's a minor?
Excuse me?
Is it possible to redirect the camera since he's a minor? Or to stand somewhere where it isn't? Max would like to say something about his garden.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I actually heard what you're asking me.
The camera, so that he wants to say something, Max does. He's 4.5. I'd rather not have him on camera, neither would his dad. Is it possible to redirect it?
Mr. Chair, may I? So this is a public meeting and it is being televised and recorded, just so that you're aware.
Can we bring the microwave, not the microwave, the microphone over here for him to speak though?
Yes, you can do that.
Wesley, would you be able to
I guess I would just mention to the AV technician to perhaps not put the camera on the speaker.
I can see why you do it.
Thank you, Mary.
Okay, this is my son, Max. How old are you? Are you 4.5?
Don't know.
4.5, and he's very shy. He's a bit of an introvert, and he's working on it, and the community garden has helped him to do that. Do you want to tell them a little bit about your garden? And about your pumpkin babies that you brought that Daddy's holding right now?
Pumpkin babies?
Yep, your pumpkin babies, your seedlings, and
Yeah.
your tomatoes that you started about a week before we found out that they were closing off the community garden?
Yeah.
Yeah, and what happened when you found out? Were you happy about them closing the community garden?
Sad.
Why were you sad?
They want
You want to what? Do you want to plant? Do you want to play with your friends? The other kids that are there running around with Tony and Tia?
Yeah.
Yeah? Do you get to run around a lot because we live in an apartment?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have a garden at Daddy's. It's even bigger than Mummy's, don't you? But Why do you like the garden over at the community garden? Do you see people all the time there?
Yeah.
Do you get to run around freely? Is there a lot of, do you see the people walking the dogs and the people who are there from the local apartment buildings? Oh my goodness, yes. It's past his bedtime at this point. But his daddy and I thought it was important enough. His daddy and I thought it was important enough that we both came together to make sure he got here. So his daddy's going to take him home now, and I'd like to say something if that's okay. Okay? Do you want to take the plants? All right, you're going to go home with daddy. Give me a big hug and kiss.
Thank you, Max.
Can you say thank you, Mayor Khan?
Thank you,
Mayor Khan. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Okay, go say goodbye to your friends quick. Say bye-bye, Roland. Bye, Tia. Bye, Tony. Okay, go with daddy. Go, 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 go. Now I have to figure out what to do with all these basil plants, tomato plants, and pumpkins. Don't step on that. Okay. So much like my child, I'm an introvert, so bear with me here. I've got everything written down. I'll probably fumble a little bit.
Please
But
don't
this
be
is-
too shy to say your name and address for us.
My name is Michelle Nikofrakis. I'm at 317 Maple Ave. It's an apartment building in Keene, New Hampshire. I'm a lifelong Cheshire County resident, and I'm quite upset with how things have gone down since I've been in communication with Parks and Rec since around, I would say, December, trying to figure things out, because we've been making choices and everything with seeds and whatnot, and Max is very attached to the place. And we invite over other people there, and they're always enjoying the place. So I'm just going to go ahead with my speech now because, again, true introvert. Our local government made a choice that made my 4.5-year-old cry. After his father and I separated, and it was a rough separation, Max and I settled into a 2-bedroom apartment right down the street from the community garden. We were told we could put in 1 or 2 pots on our patio, but nothing big. There wasn't much room around. The pandemic was over, and it was hard to begin socializing with him as an older mother despite my large network. The garden became our special place. He would run up and down the lanes, visiting other mothers, grandmothers, playing with all the other children that would come to help friends and families weed or just hang out. Max was outside in the fresh air, digging, planting seeds, building volcanoes in the dirt, and playing in the plastic playhouse that we no longer had a yard for. He wasn't inside playing video games like other kids. He learned so much about gardening, self-regulation, patience, and kindness from his friends at the garden. We came up with better plans and layouts for the garden. Each year got a little bit better. This year, we ordered many different types of thyme plants, a plant that thrives in dry climates, to fill the space near our existing plants. I absolutely hate taking the time to water anything. I love having a self-sufficient garden. After 2 or 3 days of watering, I even let my tomatoes grow on rainwater. We harvested hundreds of dollars worth of tomatoes from just 3 plants last year. We still have some left, dehydrated and preserved in olive oil. They taste just as tart and sweet as the day we picked them. Back at the beginning of February, I asked Max if he wanted to go out of town on vacation this year or buy plants for the garden. He immediately yelled, "Garden!" I know. We poured over seed and plant catalogs. We budgeted. We made sure our soil zone were appropriate matches. We made sure we chose some of the best soils so that we even bought it already. Unfortunately, I can't return it, to make sure that the good fungi is in there so that, we have a larger harvest and it's healthier for the dirt. We purchased 18 tomato plants, many different types of herbs, perennials, kale, pepper plants, squash, beans, and over 100 onion starts. If anyone has gardened here, you know how much space onion starts take. But we just finished our onions that we planted last summer. I haven't had to buy onions in months. And we do a lot of fresh cooking because of it. We even purchased a large blooming mum, which was my personal thing. It was on sale. I couldn't help it. I've been wanting this mum forever, and they come back every year. I know it seems like a silly purchase when I could be purchasing something that we could eat, but I splurged. I spent $15 on a mum. Last year we were told the garden would be no-till, which means that we could keep our plants in the garden. That means that the time that I planted, I didn't have to buy again. I didn't have to reinvest. It was a no-brainer for me because I spend around $150 to $200 per month on groceries as a single parent. I do that because I cook mostly lentils and other beans and rehydrate, and that's how we're able to live a nice life. Taking away the garden means that I no longer have the ability to constantly put fresh vegetables, fruits on the table for my son, which is very upsetting.
We planted peonies, my favorite flower because it draws the ants and aphid pests away from our vegetables. We had planted a hibiscus plant because my ex fell in love with the deep color of the red, and planted non-invasive honeysuckle to provide a home for the birds, the pollinators, and attract hummingbirds. We planted so much lemon thyme and oregano to ward off the mosquitoes and keep those deer away. But by the way, my family's originally from New Jersey, my mom. They can jump 30 feet high. You're going to have deer in that fenced-in area, no matter if it's 6 or 8, unfortunately. We put up a temporary, ugly, and I hated it, black net around the perimeter to keep the deer out. We planted 20 Orient lilies that I found on sale that would grow up to 96 inches tall and emit a lovely scent that the deer absolutely hate. We planted everything. We planned everything to a T. We were thrilled that the Grassroots Fund was willing to work with our garden regarding very large grants and money that the city refused to respond about. We were thrilled that we didn't have to worry about listeria or E. coli. If you've read recently about Aldi's, they've been dealing with that quite a bit and stuff being recalled across the country, actually, infecting our produce. I saved thousands of dollars this year from eating from our garden. As a single parent, I was able to put fresh food on the table daily and teach my child to do the same. We learned math, science, reading, and planning skills. He's improved so much in time management at 4.5. His father and I do not get along at all. However, we were able to come together on this because it affects Max, every aspect of Max's life. You saw that he was here today. Our local government made my 4.5-year-old cry. I will not forgive that or the blatant misuse of conservation lands when solar options over parking spaces exist and Cedar Crest is purchasing additional space from the church to expand their parking lot. Solar panels over the parking lot would benefit staff, clients, and Keene Renewable Energy. I have about 15 years in the healthcare sector. I've worked with the disabled population. I'm not quite sure what the correct term is because I switched to manufacturing during the pandemic, but it would benefit everyone. And I believe our group, I think I'm okay in speaking for you guys. I mean, I think most of us are willing to do fundraising in order to support it. Cedar Crest is important to our community. And I believe this local business that deals with solar is possibly able to do that type of construction if we're able to get the funding together. If our goal is to make money and pan the feeling, health, and needs of our people, then go ahead and continue to approve the loss of this special place that has over 50 years in the making. I would also be interested in knowing how the city plans on using the money from the sale of this conservation committee doesn't use it in 6 months' time. I've scanned over the documents from your planning committees in the past, and I came across several. So if it's still the way that it was before, in about 6 months, if the Conservation Committee doesn't use that funding, it goes back to the city. We are Keene, New Hampshire. We are smarter and more progressive than this. We have heart. And I would hope that the Planning Committee would do the right thing by everyone because solar is so important. We only have 3 different types of main power that we can use in New Hampshire, and that's hydroelectric, which is extremely expensive to set up, even though our dams are all kind of failing at this point. We have nuclear, which is by far the cleanest, most efficient energy that's still super effective, so crazily dangerous. And then we have solar, which just seems to make sense. And I'm probably over my time, and I thank you for not already dinging me. I appreciate it. Thank you guys for being so human. Thank you, Mayor Khan. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, I hate to be an ogre, but I'm going to try to keep people to the 3 minutes.
My name is Autumn Delacroix from 618 Court Street. I'll be really quick. There were 2 big points I wanted to drop. There was the question of noise, the hum from the solar panels, and we were given the vague judgment call of minimal. We have technology. Let's have decibels. Let's talk about what the transmissibility is before anything about this is approved. Second, I think one of the strangest moments in the presentation describing the plan was bragging about 20 feet between these rows of panels when 12 was sufficient. It was suggested like this was a better version because we met more than the minimum when we're dealing with an active community fighting for its space. You're giving up 25% of the space that you're trying to claim. Find some way to shrink that down. That's more space for other people.
Others?
Amy McIntyre, 26 Barker Street in Keene. I'm relatively new to the community garden, but I've had a house in Keene for 20-some years with a tiny, shady lot. So I was thrilled to become a part of this place and community. And I guess some people have brought up space just now, community. I'm just want to mention the time, like in terms of 50 years and the timing of not getting notice many weeks and months into this. Gardening is not something that just happens like poof. You need planning, you need time. 50 plus years of soil development and infrastructure cannot be, first of all, you're talking about making a space for the garden, but it hasn't been said clearly, there is no garden in 2025 in this plan. Not 2025, you're talking about 2026. So there's nothing for this year at this point that has been given to any of the gardeners. And if the garden was moved in 2026 to the place where the solar array had originally been planned, that's another thing with time. You can't just throw up some grass and suddenly have productive soil in a place that hasn't been cultivated, hasn't been caretaken, hasn't been prepared for gardening in years, if ever. So the timing to say that in 2026 people can have this space, not in 2025, in 2026, and have it be the same kind of experience or even same productivity, same infrastructure, it does not seem really very realistic to me in terms of talking about timeframes. And there's all kinds of things that what in the gap between this year and 2026, were you to move the site, what happens to the perennials? What happens to the other infrastructure? What happens to the things that people planted because they thought that they had no till and they could make perennials? What happens to that? I don't see that that's been addressed at all by any of this planning, and I don't believe that the gardeners who have more knowledge of what it takes to garden and what it takes to make a garden have been included in this new plan and this process to date, and they need to be to make it even feasible. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Tammy Adams, and just so you know, I am listed as an alternate on the planning board, but I'm not sitting where you are tonight. I would just like to say a couple of things. I know you cannot address any of the gardening stuff. You have to work within your purview. That doesn't mean you can't send strong messages to the city council. And they need to hear this message loud and clear. They need to hear that the tenants that the city had an agreement with for the gardens have property still on that land. There needs to be some sort of accelerated plan for these people to get their plants off of that lot before July 1st or whenever the solar array starts the construction, and onto that other proposed piece of property adjacent to it. I don't see any reason why the city can't remove some of that rich, worked topsoil and move it over to the adjacent plot. This is nothing that you guys have to do, but send the message to the council. This is a very serious problem. Solar energy is great. Mr. Hansel said some great things, made some great points. The hungry people can't eat solar energy. They can't. But they can eat food from a garden plot. And I would really, it's very disappointing that the whole growing season is going to be lost. But your tenants that the city had an agreement with, they paid for that plot, should be allowed to have their plants moved and a place to move them to. And good luck. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Tony Baker, and I live at 8 Russell Street here in Keene. I've been a gardener at the community gardens for about 9 years now, and I think it was probably 5 years ago now that Roland and I were meeting one day, and there was a empty lot just adjacent to where Roland's garden was, and we said, I wonder what happens if we just throw a bunch of seeds out there and give it to the community kitchen. So we talked to the rec center, and they said, sure, go ahead. So for the last 4 or 5 years now? 5 years now, we have produced over 400 to 600 pounds of cherry tomatoes, peas, green beans, some potatoes, some onions, but mostly the smaller things that the community kitchen needs. And without having a garden this year, it may sound like a very small piece of what the community kitchen needs, but we've been providing that for 5 years. In this economic world right now, that's huge, let alone the fact that, as Michelle had said, I feed my family from this garden of 4, and I'm raising grandchildren now. I feed them all year. I'm still using onions and peppers and everything from last year's garden. What do I do to be able to supplement our food source this year in 2025 if all of a sudden 2 weeks ago we found out that we're not going to have a garden? So I would really, really hope that we consider either moving it this year and being able to open it with the help from the gardeners and being able to do that, or moving the solar panels back to where they were originally there. Thank you.
I want to thank the panel for staying so late. My name is Sarah Harpster. I live at 32 Old Walpole Road in Keene. And I was working at the community kitchen and was able to see the produce that was coming in from this community garden, and there were others. But this community garden has a special longevity and I think social capital that some of the other projects weren't able to create and sustain. I'm very concerned about the food security that people are experiencing going into this year, prior to this year. When I was last at the community kitchen, the numbers were going up by 40% last fall over 2023. And we're seeing day by day news of slashed funding, USDA funding for food pantries to be able to make purchases from local farms. It's one thing after another. Meanwhile, the price of food in the grocery store is 25% more than it was pre-pandemic. I think that for people to lose the opportunity to garden in the year of 2025 would be a tragedy. And it would also be very sad for the community kitchen to lose some of the best produce that was put on the tables there. So thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you for staying. As she said, it's past my bedtime, so it's probably maybe past a few others. My name is Tia Zunbauer. and I own a home in Keene at 287 Elm Street. And I have and of course, like almost all of us support solar, and we all support Cedar Crest. But we just didn't want to see ourselves being displaced from this wonderful community garden. And I do have a question about process. Was there a notice, was there a public notice, or does there have to be in the city of Keene that a piece of land was being sold? And was it open for bids? And was it sold for market value? I mean, I think all of those things are of concern to those of us that are actually residents of the city. And and we probably could have bought it ourselves if it was a situation of needing to sell the land. We could have figured out how to actually buy the land as a nonprofit community garden. So I just want to put that out there. Thank you so much.
Yep, come on up.
Hello, my name is Amanda Littleton, and I live at 20 Horseshoe Road in Chesterfield, New Hampshire. I'm here tonight, and thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I'm here tonight in my capacity as the Conservation District Manager for Cheshire County. I'd like to thank the City of Keene, and specifically the Department of Parks and Recreation, for the support for decades for these community gardens. As you're hearing tonight, there's so much heart and emotion and value in what these gardens offer to our community. I'd also like to suggest that, as Mr. Hansel did first off, that it would be great to try to find a solution that could both accommodate the gardens in their current location and a space for them in 2025 as well. While there could be some solutions for where the solar array could be placed in an alternate situation. So I just want to share that the Conservation District is one of a great many of the community partners who have linked arms with the Monadnock View Community Garden to support community self-reliance and food security and the wise use of natural resources here in the city of Keene. Over the past 2 years, we've received 2 grants to work with the Monadnock View Community Garden and invested about $15,000 in garden infrastructure, equipment, and supplies. This includes a shed, water spigots, garden tools, pollinator habitat, native plant hedgerow, and more. And we're only one partner. These funds have been significantly leveraged by the investments of other partners, including Bensonwood, Antioch Community Garden Connections, the New England Grassroots Fund, and other regional nurseries who've donated significant plants for this effort as well. These public and private community partners do see value in what's happening at the community garden, and the individuals here, as you've seen, have such a deep passion, and it's very inspiring. The priorities at the Conservation District are about supporting soil health, efficient water management, and wildlife habitat, including for our native pollinators. And what the gardeners at the Monadnock View Community Garden have done, they've implemented these practices to demonstrate these priorities in action, and they've invested so much of their own time, money, and effort into this as well. The site is really a center for community education, not just for the gardeners who are involved, but also for the larger community when they are hosting workshops and events on how community members can support growing their own food. Again, I'd like to thank the city again for the decades of support, but really encourage the city to consider the impacts of the move on the gardens and the financial investments that have been made, both that it would take significant city resources to be able to create that in the new site, as well as the time and resources of the gardeners to invest in bringing the site up to the current conditions that exist. But most importantly, I just would like to encourage the city to collaborate with the gardeners on a solution and keeping a transparent and respectful process moving forward, and how we could work together to craft a new plan for this. So thank you for the opportunity to speak with you.
Dave Morrill, Mechanic Street in Keene.
Thank you for hearing our comments. As Roland said, this is our first opportunity to make our voice heard publicly. Before I offer my comments about the importance of the community gardens, I want to offer my frustration with a lack of transparency on this project. One of the main stakeholders, the gardeners, were left out from the beginning and not consulted on this plan, their expertise ignored. As for the importance of the community gardens, others have pointed out that the city's goals regarding community gardens are clear and explicit throughout the master strategic plans. It's not just for the sake of a hobby that it's included in the master plan. Community gardens are important for food security as well as climate change resilience and mitigation. I know renewable energy is also included in the master plan, but trading farmland for solar panels is not a plan for sustainability. Solar panels belong on roofs, above parking lots, and on land not appropriate for farming. They don't belong on land more appropriate for growing food. In addition to the issues of food security and climate change, community gardens are an important part of a resilient city, especially during disasters. Community gardens help strengthen social interactions, relieve stress, and build social capital that is needed when a disaster strikes. Planning and establishing community gardens prior to a disaster help increase community resilience in the event of a significant disaster, whether natural or human-caused. Gardens should be designed with features that encourage social interaction and group gardening activities to enhance feelings of control and normalcy and reduce stress. They should be managed to support appropriate community building activities and events. In short, we need more, bigger, and thoughtfully designed community gardens, not fewer, smaller gardens squeezed in where they're deemed out of the way. They need to be valued, not disregarded for the expedience of another project. As far as the security concerns of the police and the fence, height of the fence, I don't know. I think it's probably worth asking police what they think about the fence. But I grew up in Maple Acres, just on the other side of that. And when I was in high school, I cut through that pathway from the church through the community gardens and the cemetery all the time. So I'd be surprised to hear that that's not still being used as a throughway. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Andy Holt, Forest Street in Keene. I think I wanted to say first, there was talk about not including the garden in this decision that you guys are making today. I think that would be a mistake. If there's any way that you can include all of this input that you've got, I think that's important. I think the zoning board meeting, we weren't there because of the lack of communication, but I don't think this would have passed the zoning board given the questions they have to consider. I don't really think this project should move forward as it stands, given all of this input. I think the city should be looking for opportunities to expand garden locations the way they're looking for opportunities to expand solar. You're hearing today how important this is to our community. The communication with the public has been lacking, as we've heard. I don't think that was out of malice. I think that was just mistakes and misunderstandings. But in this decision making, the people that are using the land actively should be a really important part of the plan and how it gets moved forward and the timing of it. So I think that's a big mistake, and I think we should be working as a city to correct that, like Mr. Hansel was saying. As far as the location of the solar, there was talk about the setbacks needing to be 50 feet and trying to comply with that, this location where the garden is being better for the setbacks, but I think it should be a matter of what our priorities are. The setbacks and the zoning and those specific requirements, or the existing use of the land, all the important features that everyone has mentioned of the garden. I think having the different siting makes a lot of sense, even if it is a little bit less in compliance with the zoning. It's going to be a lot better for our community if we can preserve these garden plots. There was talk about just shifting it, but as people have spoken to, it is not easy to just upend the plots in the soil that has been built up over years and years. The fencing got a lot of discussion because of a comment of input from the police. There wasn't that input of comments from the gardeners, and so it feels very lopsided that we're spending a lot of time and energy talking about fencing, which the revision doesn't seem to think is very necessary. But we're not, as a board, the board is not spending the time talking about the garden impact and the use of the land and what it's going to do to the community, which I think is the much more important aspect here. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Oh, sorry. Hi, my name is Sandy Hunt. I live at 33 Barker Street, and I'll be brief, I promise. I don't have anything to add in regard to what all my fellow gardeners have already shared regarding all the, impacts it has on the gardeners, but I'd rather just reiterate that I urge this committee to fully vet and consider if there's a way to make that initial proposal viable again somehow so that there is less disruption to the community garden. And I'm a full supporter of solar, so I definitely would like to see that go forward. It's just, can it go forward? Is there a way to make it work on its original location? Thank you.
I hope I'm the last one because I was already up here once. Hi, I'm still Heidi Bukowski, 58 Eaton Hill, Gilsum. I'm just going to quickly read this because I sent this letter really late and I'm not sure you all had the time. Dear members of the Planning Board, I'm here today on behalf of my gardening friends to help support their plea to allow the Monadnock View Community Garden to remain where it is currently located, and so that another location can be determined for the Cedar Crest Solar Energy System to be utilized. I also am a Planning Board member. I was asked to be on a committee that is called Soul Smart, that is run by the Clean Energy New Hampshire. I do support solar and alternate energy sources. What I feel has occurred in this situation was miscommunication and misunderstanding of a piece of land where the Monadnock View Community Gardens are located. This group of gardeners who are being asked to move are upset for a number of reasons, which I will not get into because they all have. But what I feel we need is to compare the benefits for the positive aspects of both the community garden and the solar array. The two things I need you to realize is that mental health and food insecurity are a part of community gardens. Did you know that working in the soil and digging in the earth can improve your mental health? It has been proven time and time again that having people who feel isolated, depressed, insecure can benefit from their outdoor time in the sunshine and working the soil. This is also having a huge benefit to the gardeners, their families, and the people that are gathering at the Monadnock View Community Garden, from which we heard from Michelle and her son. Learning about growing their own food, sharing their knowledge with others as the young and the old intermix. It's a beautiful, healthy thing to have right here in our own community of Keene. Next are facts I gathered from Feeding America website. Did you know that over 8,000 community members in Cheshire County are food insecure? 13% of all the Cheshire County's children are also suffering from food insecurity. Monadnock View Community Garden is doing a huge service to the Keene community, where it has provided additional healthy vegetables to be brought to the community kitchen. This is before I even knew that Sarah Harpster was here tonight. I know this firsthand because I was an employee at the community kitchen, and that the extra vegetables from other community gardens have always made the clients that attend the community kitchen who are in need of these weekly boxes that are so happy to receive these freshly grown items. There's a need for the garden to continue doing what it has been doing. It is a great community connection between those that are giving and those that are in need. Also wanted to mention there are plots being used by gardeners who are providing their own families with food, as we've heard, to allow their monthly food budget to go further. We all know the grocery store costs have been increasing, and community garden allows people to use their time, energy, and knowledge to prevent more food insecurity from occurring in the city of Keene. Now to the benefits of solar. Yes, it can be a better environmental resource to save on the use of fossil fuels. Yes, it can allow Cedar Crest to offset their cost of energy. And yes, it's a great idea. However, please allow the Monadnock View Community Garden to do their beneficial projects and good, while Cedar Crest locates another location to do their own solar benefits. Thank you for listening. I am a concerned active citizen, which at the bottom you'll see all the things I'm involved in, who cares about this procedural process. And I hope that this situation will have a positive outcome with accepting all the positives in the Monadnock View Community Garden as one to be preserved and applauded, while also working to find a better, more reasonable location for the solar system to benefit Cedar Crest. Thank you for your time.
Please.
I just wanted to quickly correct some statistics that we heard before of the, or clarify the statistics of the plots that are not being used by gardeners at the community garden. 6 of them have been graciously donated by the, or the cost covered by the city of Keene so that we can grow for the community kitchen. And 4 of them are longstanding pollinator plots that were part of another project. There is 2 other plots that we have not been allowed to use. And just to say that for, there was over 24 names on my contact list, and the garden has been fully subscribed for the last 2 years with a waiting list. Thanks.
I wasn't planning on talking, but my name's Mike Miller. I live at 365 East Surrey Road. And we moved from Harrisville last year, and we put a solar array on our house, and we had it on 3 different roofs. And the one thing that I've never seen is, I guess this is the array over here, but no, you've never showed it to all of us, you know. And what I don't know is this area, this is Cedar Crest over here?
No, Cedar Crest
That's
is
here.
to the left, yep.
What's this area, is this going to be the cemetery? Is that it one day? Is this part of the cemetery, or is it
So
part of the?
That's
this-
an adjacent parcel. That's an adjacent parcel.
That the city of Keene owns?
No.
Oh. Because what I was thinking of, why don't they divide up the array and put it in, you know, move it around so that we can have our garden? I mean, that's easy. Doesn't have to be all at one place. All you can do, you can attach it with the electricity wire, you know? I mean, okay. That's what I'm saying is, why can't there be another plan? We never had we never had any kind of a say in this. And maybe there's a better way to put the array. I mean, there's not anyone here from Cedar Crest to say maybe there's some other possibilities, or maybe there is. Is there anyone here from Cedar Crest?
Yes, there is. Yes, there is.
So what do you think about all this?
What can you say? I think we have looked at options from the beginning. Again, we have been working on.
Yeah, hold on a second. If you want to speak, Mr. Miller, if you're done, if you're done, then.
I'll be done.
I mean, my name is Jim Yanizzi. I'm the Director of Finance at Cedar Crest. We've been working with Revision for quite some time about this project, not intending to disrupt anything, but intending to offset our electric costs. Cedar Crest provides medical and education care for children with disabilities. As the Director of Finance, I can tell you our electric bill is a doozy in the summertime. And we're trying to figure out how to offset some of those costs as we try to operate, not to make a profit, not by a long shot. Our operating loss is significant every year, but we manage to stay there because of the work we do. So, you know, we're just trying to survive, and solar energy is certainly a viable path forward for us. When we talked about this project, it was talking about offsetting, I think the staff was 57% of our electricity needs. That's what we're trying to do. So we've looked at the other options. This seemed to be the option that made the most sense as far as getting power to us without losing power in length of line. So I'm certainly not a solar expert. I'll leave that to Megan.
Thank you.
Could I address some questions?
Okay, sure. But please limit it to 3 minutes.
I just wanted to say that, I appreciate the comments made here this meeting. Certainly myself, I support local food movements, and the intent of this project has always been to allow the two uses to coexist. The city has been an important partner for us on this project, and we appreciate Andy and Kara's time in developing a relocation plan that is intended to grow the program and provide more access and opportunity. As far as some of the questions raised, we have thoroughly looked at the options for Cedar Crest on this parcel. This is proposed as the best path forwards to achieve both goals of having both the gardens and the solar in this area. Let's see. There's a question over the noise that was brought up again. I just wanted to be more clear on that the Land Development Code specifies 60 decibels during daytime operations. That is on the spec sheets that we have submitted. The equipment does not produce more than that and only operates during the daytime. This project.
I'm sorry, could you speak up?
Oh, I apologize. Let's see. I lost my train of thought here, but I just on the comment about noise, the Land Development Code specifies that equipment shall not exceed 60 decibels. That is the case for this equipment. It is on the spec sheets that we submitted, and additionally is enclosed by a barrier that will dampen noise. So we do meet the code in that requirement, finally, I just wanted to say we support both uses. Revision has allocated funds in our project budget to support the relocation, so we do want a solution that allows both uses to coexist. And that is, that's my comments. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay.
Thank you for letting me speak again. As far as decibels go, I work in manufacturing now. I used to work in healthcare. I know I'm speaking again. Anything above 35 decibels, we have to wear hearing protection for. I believe OSHA, it's 80, but in the manufacturing world, I believe it's pretty standard for about 30, 35 because you can lose your hearing. The type of sound that I believe the solar panels make, correct me if I'm wrong, is more of a hum. But that type of noise going over and over again can still cause damage. I know with the buffers and everything else like that, it might not be as severe, but from at least what I was reading online, and online is always true, right? You shouldn't be more than 50 to 100 feet away from the solar panels or whatever the noise where it's coming from. And they're usually, from what I read online, supposed to be around 28 to 35 decibels. So the 60 is kind of beyond what I did research on, so I'm a little bit surprised by that. But again, in manufacturing, at 30, 35, you're wearing ear protection. So that's a lot for kids that are, well, it can be a noise disruptor as well. I haven't done any research on it, but it might be something that you guys might want to take into consideration. Thank you.
Yeah, well, the code is the code. If it's 60, then that's what it is. It's kind of an unusual approach, but Mr. Bohannon, would you like to add any words at this point? You're essentially the owner of the property.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Andy Bohannon, Deputy City Manager. So just a couple of things. We will certainly confirm numbers related to garden plots, having been through that process for many years. I'm just a little confused related to recognizing grants. The 2 grants that we did receive, we went through the City Council process. So we have recognized grants that have come through on that front. We have worked, we did meet with Roland and Amanda early in March. And then as we came back, we looked at the plans. We had initial drawings drawn up by the engineering department. We revised those as a result of those meetings. We have included a new irrigation system. All of the costs related to the changes are actually going to be minimal through various donations that we've been able to get for this process that Director Fisk-Hennessy has been able to get. So, working, I recognize one of the biggest things or the biggest challenges that this group is facing is we've heard it repeatedly tonight, just related to the soil quality. We have worked with, and this is one of the things that we were going to be following up with Roland on from our earlier March meeting, and just related to how we lay out the garden beds will be laid out this spring and covered and cultivated for 2026. We can certainly work with them related to skimming the soil that's there now, cultivating that within a pile, so, or either that, putting it in some of the future beds, so that helps prepare the soil for 2026. But that's kind of the direction that we're going, where this project, we ask all the gardeners to, remove their belongings and from their gardens in late or early November. Many of them plant over the course of the winter time, so they do have a few harvests. I know garlic is one of them, and so, but they've asked if they could have that harvest before the project starts. We've accommodated that. That was part of the discussion that we had with Revision related to moving the deadline or the construction start in July. That was part of the process and the thought process. So just trying to work with that as best we can. But we do feel that we have a very strong plan for 2026 to move forward and accommodate and work with this group related to having a successful process in 2026.
Thank you. Okay. At this time, I'm going to close the public portion of the meeting. I want to thank everyone for their inputs. And at this time, we will move to a motion and then deliberation. So I'm going to ask for a motion on the application. Yeah, let's do the boundary line adjustment first.
I'd like to move to approve PB-2025-05 as shown on the plan identified as boundary line adjustment prepared by Huntley Survey and Design, PLLC, at a scale of 1 inch equals 60 feet on March 6, 2025, with the following conditions precedent prior to final approval and signature of the plans by the Planning Board Chair. Number 1, owner's signature appear on the proposed BLA plan. Number 2, submittal of 4 full-size paper copies and 2 Mylar copies of the plans. Number 3, submittal of a check in the amount of $26 made out to the City of Keene to cover recording fees. And 4, inspection of the lot monuments by the Public Works Director or their designee following their installation or the submittal of a security in a form and amount acceptable to the Public Works Director to ensure that the monuments will be set.
Thank you. I have a second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Rangel. All right, I'd like to hear from the board of comments and your feelings on the boundary line adjustment first. Mr. Hafer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to be clear, this is moving city property to the ownership. Cedar Crest will become the owner of this property based on this a positive vote on this boundary line adjustment would transfer property to Cedar Crest. And is there a financial component to the transfer? Or is this just a goodwill or an agreement?
I think that's beyond our purview, but I don't know the answer to it. Ms. Brenner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mary Brenner, Senior Planner. So any sale of city property has to go through City Council for approval, and then once City Council approves it, it's, I believe it would be up to the city manager to negotiate the sale. And I do believe the city is selling the land. I don't think we're donating it, but I don't know the exact amount. But yeah, that's my understanding.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think if
So
I may, Mr. Chair.
Planning board is not involved in that process at all.
Yeah, understood. I'm just trying to understand the entire process moving forward from this point. I think that might be helpful for all of us just to understand what steps happen after voting tonight and what other approvals will be this project be going through.
Yeah, if I might. Just to answer some question about property transactions, those can be confidential, taken up in non-public session by the city council with the empowerment of the city manager to then negotiate terms and see if that can happen.
So there's
so that, we heard one comment that why wasn't that publicly noticed? Well, no property transaction is ever publicly noticed until after a sale has occurred or a transaction has occurred.
Mr. Cost.
I'm not sure who this question is for, but maybe staff. But if we approve the transfer, then does the planning board then the land just say is not going to be owned by the city, and I know that takes a while, it's not happening tonight, but then do we have less, I guess, less influence or input into the site development, since they're happening, we're talking about these separately, correct? The way that
We are, yes.
Right. So by approving this now, so the land now is going to be Cedar Crest, or at least we approve that, then what happens at the next step? It seems like we want to be, I know we have to talk about them separately, but it seems like they're just too intertwined, and one directly feeds into the other.
There's no doubt. I mean, if, for example, we said we would not approve the boundary line adjustment, then there wouldn't make a lot of sense to approve the major site plan.
And the only reason I'm
However,
asking,
if we do approve the boundary line adjustment, we can adjudicate the major site plan based on its merits.
so if we wanted to, we could still then discuss. I heard a lot of discussion about options, alternatives, tightening up the rows. Maybe we, as a planning board and the city, can think about a little grace on the 50-foot setbacks that, maybe could put this into a smaller footprint possibly. So I just want to make sure we're not sure we want to go there, but make sure we're not precluding that discussion.
Ms. Fortson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Megan Fortson, planner. I just want to clarify that things like setbacks are requirements that live under the zoning code, and this ground-mounted solar array is considered a structure that is subject to the setbacks for the conservation district in which it's proposed to be located. So if they were to propose a setback that was less than 50 feet, that's something that would need to go to the zoning board for approval. That's not something that's under the purview of the planning board.
Other comments? Ms. Master Giovanni?
Well, I really don't think that as a planning board, we have the ability to change, anything that's happening tonight. I personally will say that as a gardener and a supporter of the community kitchen and all of that, I would encourage the city to work with the gardeners to try to figure this out. But understand that as a planning board, our hands are pretty tied.
Yeah,
Mr. Mayor?
I feel similar to Roberta's comments. I guess I want to just review one more time, and because I can't come back and have those facts too well at my thoughts. There's a reason why the site is what it is, because it has less future impact, I think. But I guess I'd just like to hear that summary one more time, the case that this is the site. It was selected for a reason, and here's that reason.
Mr. Bohannon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the site was selected based on the fact that we had originally planned on the side where the community gardens are proposed for 2026. Looking at that particular parcel, it became evidently clear to us, working the negotiation between the city and Revision Energy, that the property tax exemption, the boundary line adjustment it was very complicated. It was going to cost. It was not going to benefit Cedar Crest in a way that was any way beneficial for a solar array on their property, or to be. It was going to have to be a lease, which really complicated the matter. So, looking at this, we decided. Now, keep in mind, I think, if I'm reading the mayor's question, this whole parcel in the very back is not really desirable for future cemetery improvements. So you have the front of the cemetery as basically it's the future. The side where the community gardens are, maybe in 100 years that might be developed for cemetery, but in 100 years, nobody in this room is going to have to worry about that. And so losing it, that whole back acreage, it's really kind of like, I'm not going to say wasteland, because it's definitely utilized for the community gardens, has been for a very long time. 1990, the sale happened and cut off a larger portion of that. So it was, to meet the zoning requirements, we really needed to move the location over to this particular lot and benefit Cedar Crest with the tax benefits that were to come with solar. And those were the reasons. Did that clarify the question, your question, Mayor?
needed to hear the response again, and that's the response. So.
Can you turn on your microphone, please?
Well, I thought it, that, I needed to hear the response again.
Okay.
So, thank you. Good enough.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Hafer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could you, or city staff, just the process here, presuming a vote, you know, a vote of approval here, what the public process is moving forward for this project? Is there further review from city council, from committees, from other bodies?
Yeah, I can't speak for the city council part, but for planning board decisions, there is a process where there's a time frame where abutters have a chance to appeal decisions.
Okay.
Mary, Mr. Hafer's question was, what role or what options do the public have once a decision is made?
Sure. So due to a recent change in state law, the only folks who legally can appeal a decision have to have what's called standing. So if you're an abutter, so if you directly abut the property or live within 200 feet of the property boundary, you are automatically considered to have standing because you're an abutter and can appeal within 30 days of the final decision. Otherwise, you would have to, I think you have to petition the court to get a abutter status, and then you can appeal. But it's a short time frame. Again, the planning board's decision tonight is whether or not the proposal meets your standards. That's a pretty sort of cut and dry decision. This project did require a variance, and so that would be probably the item that is also a decision that can be appealed, although I believe that appeal timeframe has, it's also a 30-day appeal timeframe, I believe, but I would assume that's mostly or almost lapsed. But it would be from the date of final approval. So what's happening tonight is what's called a conditional approval, and then the 30-day appeal clock doesn't start until final approval is issued for the application. Did that help?
Thank you. Mayor Khan.
Yes. So I find myself thinking about three topics that are coming together here. One is we've got an amazing facility here in Keene with Cedar Crest that is one of a kind in New England. And I have been an advocate for that organization in as many roles as I've been able to fill in the past. And I want to continue to be an advocate for that organization. I think that, as what Mr. Hansel said, our community energy goals are important to us. The City Council this last week wrestled with community energy goals. We came out in a very positive statement about how to work with our community to achieve some climate action goals, and we're moving forward in those directions. This is a component of moving on our community energy goals and our community energy plan. And then I've recognized, since I've heard of this effort, the importance of the community garden, and could recognize we're heading for some conflict here if this is not, doesn't have a satisfactory plan going forward. So I was encouraged when I learned that, in fact, Mr. Bohannon, Ms. Hennessy, have tried to put forward a forward-looking plan. And tonight I'm hearing, there's some potholes in the path to getting there, but there's a plan for trying to move forward. Clearly, with a constituency that is very active and interested and wanting to be involved in the plan moving forward. So, 2 out of 3. It's tough to come down on this one. I'm sure each of us is going to wrestle with it, but I think the leading decision here is this site plan compliant with our land use codes? And I think I can decide that based on the testimony that's in front of us, and can support that, recognizing we have 2 goods and 1 project that's still needing to be resolved in a better way.
Yeah, very well put. So I guess we do have a motion and a second for the boundary line adjustment. So I'll call the vote on that piece of it. So all those in favor of the boundary line adjustment indicate. Any opposed? Boundary line adjustment is approved. So now let's move to the major site plan and solar array conditional use permit. Motion, yeah.
I'd like to move to approve PB-2025-04 as shown on the plan set identified as Cedar Crest, Inc., solar site development, prepared by Horizons Engineering at varying scales in February 2025 and last revised in March 2025 with the following conditions. Number 1, prior to final approval and signature of the plans by the Planning Board Chair, the following conditions precedents shall be met. A note shall be added to the proposed condition plan to state that the access road through the cemetery shall be upgraded with additional gravel to support construction vehicles as determined necessary by the City of Keene. B, owner's signature appear on the title page and proposed conditions plans. C, submittal of 5 full-size paper copies and a digital copy of the final plans. D, submittal of a security in a form and amount acceptable to the Community Development Director or their designee to cover the cost of sediment and erosion control measures and site stabilization. E, the lot line adjustment PB-2025-05 shall receive final approval. And 2, subsequent to final approval and signature of the plans by the Planning Board Chair, the following conditions shall be met. A, prior to the issuance of a building permit, the submittal of documentation demonstrating that the City of Keene has granted Cedar Crest the right to use the Monadnock View Cemetery for temporary site access during construction. B, prior to the issuance of a building permit, the required 50-foot setback line shall be pinned by a surveyor licensed in the state of New Hampshire and verified by the Community Development Director or their designee. C, prior to the commencement of site work, all sedimentation and erosion control measures, including the temporary construction access through the cemetery, shall be improved as necessary and inspected by the Community Development Director or their designee.
Thank you.
Fencing thing. We were talking about the fence.
I think it's a big. Okay, that's the motion. I'll entertain a second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Rangel. Any discussion?
I have a question
Mr.
for
Mayhew.
staff.
Question?
I have a question for staff.
Sure.
So while it's not a legal document, does the master plan give no legal standing to take into consideration cultural resources or agricultural resources?
So the master plan, as you mentioned, is not a regulatory document. The planning board regulations do take that into account. I think it probably comes up more under the subdivision regulations, but it is something, I'm sorry.
Comes up under what?
Sorry, your subdivision regulations. But that is something that the board can consider with your review of an application.
Anyone want to weigh in on the project of regional impact? Mr. Rangel?
I would say that this project does not have regional impact.
As defined?
As defined.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm sorry, you said, would you say that?
I would say that this project does not have regional impact as it's defined.
Can you hear you back here?
I said that this project does not have regional impact.
It's a planning board technical discussion, so typically if it involves other towns, not just Keene. So in this case, this is really within the boundaries of Keene in our judgment. If it has regional impact, which, for example, the project that you patiently sat through before, the gravel pit, it straddles Keene and Sullivan. So Sullivan has standing in that, in the deliberation of that project.
Thank you.
Sure. Well, I just want to, I'm very empathetic with the gardeners. My wife and I are big gardeners. We're fortunate enough to have enough space on our property to do our garden. But if we didn't, the community garden sounds like a wonderful place to belong to. I would just thinking of this as we discussed it, if this were property that were owned by a person, not the city, and they, let's say, had a lot of trees and grew food, and they decided, which happens all across the country every day, that they wanted to sell the farm, and someone was proposing to build several houses on that. Now, is that better for a community or worse for a community? I mean, you could look at it both ways, but by the time it gets to the planning board's decision is the houses that they plan to build, do they fit the code? And I think that's where we are right now. By the time it gets through the planning board, it's a little late to kind of re-engineer the whole plan. So that's just my opinion. So with that, I'll ask for a vote on this. Sorry, sir, the public portion is closed. So all those in favor of the major site plan and CUP, please indicate. Opposed?
Any comments from the board before we take that vote?
Oh, hey, I thought all the comments were over. I was looking
No.
around, nobody had their
Oh,
hand
sorry.
up. If you want to throw in another comment, we can,
I appreciate your thoughts, because I find myself in a similar situation where I feel stuck that where this process has taken us, that the application from a zoning standpoint is complete and accurate, and I'm sure I'll vote in favor of it. And would also yeah, I'll vote in favor of it. Encourage the motivated parties in this project to realize that this is not feeling like a win-win for anybody in this room, and that they could consider a continuance to our approval if they need more time to figure out a true win-win situation.
Well put. Thank you, Mr. Hafer. All right, let's go back to the vote. All those in favor of the PB 2025-05, please indicate. Any opposed? Major site plan is approved. Thank you. Appreciate everybody's participation.
Do I have to say that I'm abstaining?
Yes, that's fine.
So you have to vote either for or against the application, or announce a conflict of interest and recuse yourself. Sorry to put that
Do we have
pressure
to-
on you.
No, you're quite all right.
Yeah,
You're quite all
no,
right.
you have to
I'm here
tell
learn.
us.
Do we have to vote again, or do I just vote in the affirmative or negative?
Yeah,
I
just
think
let
you
us
can
know
just
what-
announce your vote. yeah.
Okay, I'll vote in the affirmative, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayhew. I appreciate all the heartfelt words that came out tonight. Thank you. As Mr. Hafer said, hopefully a win-win can be worked out here. Thanks, everyone for your attentiveness.
Could I talk to you?
Not right now. Well,
Pardon?
you want to talk to me?
Well, I know, I could just come up there and,
No, that's all right.
or I'm talking to all of you, just.
Not really a public hearing.
It's not, if you still got a couple things to do.
Sometime if you have a chance, take a look at the marshals. I think the vehicle, I don't know if it's an operation, I think it's a food access commission, something like that. Okay. Whichever.
Thank you, Mary. To be honest.
What we're just saying is it never should have gone.
All right, we're going to move on.
They might have felt
Next, we'd have a master plan update, which I think we can table. Mayor, is it all right to table the master plan update, or is it?
Sure. You
want
can
a
also
short-
take a quick recess if you'd like.
No, I don't want to. I don't Just speak up.
All right, I can certainly try to speak up here. So the master plan project is underway. We're in the midst of going through the task force meetings. And actually, sorry, while I'm speaking, I'm just going to ask the folks in the room to leave the room because we're still
Yeah,
meeting.
Would you guys, if you wouldn't mind, we're trying to continue the next items.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the master plan update is currently in the task forces have been meeting, and I think 4 of them met last week for their third and final time, and then we have another 2 that are meeting this week, and then that will wrap up the task force portion. And so behind the scenes, the consultants are working with staff to develop draft chapters and work on a lot of the actual writing of the document. We just had a meeting with the steering committee. We actually had 2 meetings in March, and heard a really great presentation from the Chamber of Commerce about an initiative called Magnify Monadnock that talks about trying to build the workforce in our area. So I would encourage you to read the meeting minutes. Really, really great information. And I think the minute taker did a great job of summarizing it with like bullet points. And for the next steps, the Master Plan Steering Committee is going to be meeting next week, Tuesday. And we're going to be hearing a presentation from 8th grade students from Keene Middle School for their recommendations with respect to the environmental pillar of the master plan. We will also be hearing a presentation from Southwest Region Planning Commission on regional transportation planning initiatives. And then there's actually going to be what I think will be a fun activity, hopefully, where the master plan is going to be the master plan steering committee members are going to be given markers and blank maps to draw what they would like to see development in Keene look like into the future. So I think that'll be a great opportunity for anyone who is interested in, the future development of Keene. That would be a great meeting to attend. And then following that, we're going to be launching an online story map that will summarize a lot of the input that we've received from the task forces. And it's going to be, that will be put out to the broader community. And there's going to be a short questionnaire that goes along with it. So members of the community will have an opportunity to visually see what some of the recommendations are in a way that will help contextualize it. So for example, one of the goals or one of the strategies under housing is to promote infill development, but an average person is not going to know what that means. So our goal is for the story map to visually show what we mean by infill development and actually show examples of where like infill development could occur. So that is kind of like the immediate next steps. The online discussion boards will continue to be open through the end of March, and then those will close. And then at the end of April, so we have the story map launching at the beginning of April. At the end of April, there will be another component added to the story map to show the draft future land use map. We will be sending out a decision prioritization survey to the planning board, city council, and other city senior leadership to try and prioritize some of those strategies. So you will be seeing a survey coming your way soon, towards the end of April or beginning of May, somewhere in that time frame. And then the last thing is just the June 3rd Future Summit. So that will be when we unveil the draft plan to the public and get another round of feedback before it enters the formal adoption phase. So things right now are moving really, really quickly. There's going to be a lot of updates coming at you. So definitely encourage you to follow along as best you can. Feel free to reach out to staff if you ever have any questions.
Thank you, Mary. All right. Any staff updates?
I do not have any staff updates for you.
I have an update. I became a grandfather during this meeting.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
Girl, boy,
Boy.
congratulations.
Although it's number 6, so I'm kind of used to it a little bit. Yeah. Been there before. Yeah. Yeah, well. All right, new business. Any board members have ideas for new business? We did have on here the administrative approvals. You want to tackle that tonight, or you want to just wait?
So I can certainly introduce the topic, and then if you want to discuss it further at a future meeting,
Yep, I think that's a good idea.
So at our last planning board steering committee meeting, we discussed the possibility of having more regular updates on administrative approvals. So if you'll recall, under your site development standards, and so there's two sections in the Land Development Code where your regulations live. One is in the site development standards and subdivision standards, and the other place is in Article 26, where it outlines all the application procedures. So Article 26 of the Land Development Code is where it specifies the different thresholds for different levels of planning review. So above a certain threshold, a project comes to you as a major site plan. There's kind of like a middle tier where it goes to the minor project review committee. And then there's, if it's below that threshold, it gets reviewed administratively by staff. So that is something that you all have delegated to staff. And so we have been reporting out on those administrative approvals once a year. And it's usually at the end of the calendar year, so we'll come to you in January and say, here's the list of all the approvals in the previous year. That is, I guess it's really a question for you, is that frequency enough for you? I know like some of the other boards, Historic District Commission has requested quarterly updates, for example. And I think in practice it's turned out to be more like once every 6 months just because they don't meet every month. And so not necessarily needing an answer tonight, but just wanted to raise that because it did come up at the steering committee level. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think another question on this topic is, are the thresholds set correctly? In other
Yes.
words, I mean, we were having a conversation about along the line of infill, where, you know, someone converted the use of, let's say, a commercial space to residential space. Okay, that's fine. There's really very few things in our land development code that we would actually look at if all the work is done inside. But some of these are, you know, 10, 20, 30 living units. So is that something we want to pay more attention to?
Yeah.
So that's just another question. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, we're still on TV.
Things like that, though, would have a big impact on things we consider, like traffic increases and all of those things. So, right? So even though you're just converting a building into a lot of units, it's going to add people trips, vehicle trips, and all of that.
Well, I mean, I think the assumption is that whether it's a retail space or a living space, it's not changing the traffic that much. So, I mean, that's the assumption. But maybe if, you know, and typically if you're going from retail to residential, the traffic is going lower. Anyway, it's
Perhaps the discussion illustrates it'd be good
Yeah,
to review
yeah,
what
yeah,
the
absolutely.
guidelines are,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it'd be a
Yeah.
good session for us
Yep.
and a
Yep.
training type of a thing, or just a update.
We're just talking about the administrative reviews, because the administrative review is something we've delegated to staff, and, you know, they take it seriously, but, you know, there's some question that maybe some of them, you know, we should have more visibility into, either more frequently, or maybe there's some adjustment to the standards or the thresholds, so that we could look at more of them directly, if we need to. So, anyway, that's what that conversation.
We do have a new community development director. Hopefully, he's got some experience to weigh in on that.
Sure.
I think it would be prudent to do it more than once a year, probably. You know, maybe every 6 months even. Just once a year is kind of like not enough, maybe. And I just think, for me personally, as a planning board member, the subject has come up to me by the public, you know, so I felt the need to bring it up to you guys, that I thought, I wasn't really sure what the standard was, but once a year, maybe a little more frequently would be better.
Sure. And, I mean, in fairness to staff, they do send the material to us in the packet, and I don't know if if we look at it carefully enough. So,
I think the location
another
in the
concern.
packet might also be better, because I think it's sort of in there, but not really brought to anyone's attention. So maybe if it was just brought up every 6 months or whatever, at least we can say we checked that box.
And Mr. Chair, so I think doing an update once every 6 months would be like a really simple change. But it does sound like the board would be interested in talking more about the site plan review thresholds. So what we can do is come to your next meeting prepared to have like a more in-depth discussion about that. And we have been talking internally about some things that we've just been noticing that are not like loopholes, but like.
Yeah, I
There's-
purposely
there-
avoided that word.
Yeah, there's certainly some areas where we think that there could be, especially given our focus on housing as a city, where there could be more clarity.
Yep, I think we're in agreement, and I appreciate your offer to help us with that. Thank you. All right, upcoming dates of interest. Joint Committee of the Planning Board and PLD, April 14th, 6:30 PM. That's a Monday. Planning Board Steering Committee, April 8th at 12 noon. Planning Board Site Visit, April 23rd, 8 AM, although that is to be confirmed based on the applications we have in the hopper. And then finally, the next Planning Board meeting is April 28th at 6:30 PM. And I don't think, I hate to keep doing this to you, Mary, but I don't think we have time tonight. Or the attention span. So I will call this meeting adjourned at, what is it, 9? Nope. 10:03.